On the screen, a blonde baddie and a big black trainer are deeply engrossed in a jujutsu grappling session. The woman is putting in maximum effort, letting out heavy sweats as she is put in a chokehold by her partner, completely overwhelmed by how effective this technique is. But this intense lesson isn't happening in real life for our main character. Instead, we see a disgusting, filthy 29-year-old young man, Junhyun, lying flat on his back on a mattress, gasping for air. It turns out Junhyun has completely messed up his life with a heavy addiction to his solo hand grip training, aiming to complete at least one hand endurance workout per day. He lies on his floor mattress, gripping a workout tool, and feverishly working through a forearm session while staring at his laptop. This guy is basically living like a useless carp, completely unemployed and wasting away his miserable days in a messy room next to his fridge and washing machine. As he watches the blonde athlete in the video push through her endurance training on his screen, he reflects on his miserable life, realizing that the only thing he has actually managed to acquire over the years is this massive video file and its specific item number. He even confesses to himself that he used to look up to professional male trainers in these videos, seriously wishing he could become one himself someday. With a heavy sigh, our protagonist laments the pathetic state of his current existence, feeling like he is about to go completely crazy. Yet, as he continues to watch the video, he can't help but admire the sheer quality of the performance. He grits his teeth, reaching the absolute muscle limit of his own grip training session, and prepares to finish his wrist curl practice. Grabbing a roll of toilet paper, he wonders why his body produced so much sweat today, feeling incredibly irritated by the cleanup he now has to do. On his hands and knees, he wipes down the mattress, complaining about the sheer pointlessness of wasting such precious time in such a useless, lonely place. He laments the sad reality that he has never even had a real partner to train with. Sitting back with a defeated sigh, he looks at the crumpled balls of tissue with body sweat on the floor, feeling completely empty inside. He stares longingly at his laptop screen, where the conditioning session is still playing, realizing that his deep craving for conditioning training is not something that can ever be satisfied by simply watching training videos. He desperately wants to experience what real conditioning training feels like with a real partner, something he can feel with his own body. But with his 30th birthday fast approaching, he knows that most of his peers have already experienced relationships and active lifestyles. To make matters worse, Junhyun remembers his friend Min Chan, who managed to marry a famous model and is now living an incredibly fulfilling, happy life, leaving our lonely protagonist further behind in the dust. Now his self-pity deepens as he thinks about his other friend, Young Jun, who has always been incredibly wealthy and constantly posts pictures on social media showing off the various women he meets at clubs. This wealthy young man seems to be constantly jumping from one companion to the next, leaving our protagonist feeling completely left behind. Holding a canned drink in his hand, this lonely guy sits on his mattress, staring at these posts on his phone and drowning in overwhelming jealousy. Convinced that these successful guys are probably enjoying as much high-intensity training as they want at this very moment. With a deep, heavy sigh, Junhyun sits in his cramped room and laments his own miserable situation, realizing that while his peers are out living their best lives, he is stuck alone in a shabby one-room apartment, engaging in a lonely self-training routine. But just as he is wallowing in his own self-pity, his phone suddenly starts ringing loudly, catching him completely off guard. Looking down at the screen in utter shock, he wonders who could possibly be calling him at a time like this, only for his heart to skip a beat when he sees the caller ID is none other than Kim Seo-ah. Reflecting on the old saying that even the most unfortunate people eventually have their lucky days, Junhyun dresses up in a nice blazer and heads out to the bustling streets, hoping that today might finally be his day. Clutched by intense nervousness, he desperately tries to calm his racing heart as he waits outside a restaurant. Checking his messages, he sees a text from the person he has been longing to see the most, letting him know that she is almost at their meeting spot. Kim Seo-ah is officially just a female friend, but Junhyun has harbored a massive crush on her for the longest time. To his absolute delight, this gorgeous girl actually took the initiative to contact this boy first, asking him to meet up. He looks at her picture on his phone, completely mesmerized by how much prettier she has become since they last met. Our delusional idiot reasons that there is absolutely no way a girl would invite a guy out first without a very specific, romantic reason, convincing himself that she must have finally gathered the courage to confess her feelings to him today. Getting carried away by his own sussy imagination, he impatiently wonders when she will arrive, his grin widening as he lets his thoughts run wild with the hope that today might finally be the day he gets to participate in a real, partner-based fitness conditioning session. Just thinking about the possibility of endurance training gets our hopeless hero completely enraptured. Even though he knows he might be letting his imagination run a bit too sussy from the very beginning, Junhyun can't help but hope that today is finally his lucky day. But while he stands on the street lost in his own fantasy, a beautiful woman in a form-fitting white jacket sneaks up right behind him. With a sudden playful shout, she completely startles the poor guy, causing him to gasp in sheer shock. Turning around with a bright red blush, he looks at her in utter disbelief as she warmly greets him. Apologizing for making him wait, she explains that she was late because she couldn't find a parking spot. As she leans in, noting that it has been a long time since they last saw each other, our protagonist is completely starstruck and stands frozen, unable to form a coherent sentence. Looking at the gorgeous Kim Seo-ah, his heart begins to beat uncontrollably. When she warmly asks how he has been, he finds himself screaming internally, completely overwhelmed by how much prettier she has become, and has absolutely no idea how to handle himself. Deciding to move the conversation indoors, they head into a local pub called Wari Wari to grab a drink. Sitting across from him, she remarks on how much he seems to have changed, pointing out that his body seems to be in much better shape, and that he even looks taller. She admits she almost didn't recognize him at first, prompting our embarrassed protagonist to nervously laugh it off and play it cool. The compliments keep rolling in as she tells him he has become even cooler, while he bashfully returns the compliment, telling her she has also become much prettier. Hearing this absolute joker decides that this is the ultimate confirmation of his theories, concluding that she definitely met up with him to confess her love. She goes on to mention that it has been about 6 to 7 years since they last saw each other, recalling that their last meeting was right after he was discharged from the military. He silently thanks the heavens for throwing him such a miraculous stroke of luck, realizing that if a girl like Seo-ah wants to be with him, he is absolutely all for it. As she casually changes the subject to ask if Junhyun is still in touch with their friends, Min-chan and Young-jun, our protagonist's mind completely drifts away, utterly distracted by her incredible figure. Soon enough, his thoughts spiral into a wild daydream about guiding her through an intense conditioning and grip training session. In this ridiculously vivid fantasy, he imagines participating in a hands-on, high-intensity training session where he is free to practice his grip training however he wants, convinced that a workout with someone of her incredible caliber would yield the most rewarding results. But back in the cold, harsh reality, he suddenly starts sweating and shaking, silently screaming to himself how incredibly worked up he is just thinking about it. His bizarre, tense posture immediately catches Seo-ah's attention, and she looks at him with a thoroughly puzzled expression, asking why he is acting so strange. He quickly tries to play it cool, stammering out that it is absolutely nothing. Trying to gather his scattered thoughts, this guy tells himself to calm down, remaining absolutely certain that she is about to confess her feelings to him. Clutching his beer glass, he decides to subtly fish for the main topic, pointing out that she probably had a very special reason for contacting him out of the blue. He nervously asks if she has something important to tell him, only to be met with a sussy, knowing smirk on her face. She playfully teases him, asking why he is rushing things when she was planning to build up to it slowly. Believing his victory is finally secured, he impatiently urges her in his mind to just spit it out already and confess that she wants to go out with him, ready to tell her that he likes her too. However, his illusions are instantly shattered when she drops a massive bombshell, revealing that she actually works at an insurance company. He stands completely frozen in absolute disbelief, barely processing her words as she sighs, explaining how hard it is to bring this up with friends who might easily misunderstand her motives. She continues to explain that she only wanted to recommend a fantastic deal to her circle, but because it is technically business, everyone else has been highly reluctant. In his head, our poor monkey is desperately pleading that this cannot possibly be the reason she called him out today. But the nightmare is only getting started. Taking his previous advice to be completely honest, she enthusiastically reaches out to explain that a highly beneficial new insurance plan has just been released. While he maintains a painfully forced, sweating smile and begs her in his mind not to do this to him, she sweetly asks if he wants to learn more about the details. Leaning forward with a cute, pleading gaze, she leaves him completely helpless, muttering a silent curse at his own terrible luck. Cut to later that evening outside on the street. Having actually signed the papers, Junhyun stands defeated next to her luxury car while she happily thanks him, declaring that this is exactly why they are such amazing friends. She assures him one last time that this plan is actually far more beneficial to him than it is to her. Looking completely broken and holding his brand new insurance binder, he weakly thanks her for the recommendation, only for her to coolly put on her sunglasses, bid him farewell, and drive away, leaving him alone in the dark. Standing alone outside a McDonald's, our defeated protagonist can only watch as the car drives away, leaving him in the dark. Clutching the useless insurance folder tightly under his arm, he can't help but mutter a bitter, frustrated curse at her departure, feeling completely cheated and incredibly foolish. Junhyun trudges away into the night, his heavy footsteps leading him onto a massive bridge overlooking the quiet city river. Walking along the pedestrian path, he reflects on how his supposed stroke of good luck turned out to be an absolute disaster. He realizes that instead of receiving a confession, he got talked into signing a monthly insurance deal costing 30 to 50,000 won. He bitterly questions why she would target a penniless guy like him just to meet a sales quota. His anger quickly turns inward, and he sighs as he admits to himself that he is the real idiot for actually listening to her pitch and signing the contract. Staring down at his reflection, he realizes just how pathetic his life has truly become, briefly wondering if it might be better to just throw it all away. However, he quickly dismisses the dark thought, reasoning that such an extreme measure is only meaningful when there is someone in your life who will actually mourn and cry over your absence. For a useless carp like him, Junhyun knows that no one would even notice his disappearance, and doing something reckless would only cause more trouble than it is worth. Trying to console himself with the thought that there are definitely people out there who have things much worse than he does, his self-pity is suddenly cut short. Looking further down the railing, his eyes widen in absolute shock as he spots a young woman in a blue jacket standing directly on the outer ledge of the bridge, staring down at the dark water below. Panic immediately sets in, and our protagonist yells out to get her attention, telling her that she absolutely cannot do this. Gesturing frantically for her to step back to safety, he desperately begs her to stay exactly where she is. The young woman slowly turns her head, looking back at him with a remarkably calm, somber gaze. She quietly tells him to stay back, a gentle, sad smile appearing on her face as she whispers for him to just stay where he is, right before her fingers slowly let go of the metal railing. In a split second, the young man's eyes widen in absolute horror as the young woman lets go and falls backward, plummeting through the air toward the cold water below. Leaning over the edge in sheer panic, our boy screams out in a desperate attempt to stop her, but it is already too late. He can only watch as she plunges into the river, a loud splash echoing through the dark night. Trembling uncontrollably as he grips the metal railing, Junhyun completely freezes up, unable to believe what has just unfolded right in front of his eyes. Junhyun frantically questions whether this nightmare is actually real, his mind racing as he tries to figure out what he should do, or if there is even anything a useless guy like him can do in such a desperate situation. In that hopeless moment, a flurry of thoughts runs through his head, but his instincts suddenly take over. Perhaps because he has completely lost his sanity, Junhyun sheds his jacket without a single second of hesitation, climbs right over the safety railing, and jumps headfirst into the abyss after her. Hurling himself from the massive bridge, the screaming protagonist plunges through the air, letting out a wild, terrified yell as he falls toward the dark water to try and save her. After pulling her from the dark water, Junhyun drags her onto the riverbank, gasping heavily for breath. He frantically shakes the unconscious woman's shoulder, trying to wake her up and begging her to open her eyes. Staring down at her pale, unresponsive face, he nervously wonders if she has already passed away. Desperate for any sign of life, he leans down and presses his ear against her heart, letting out a massive sigh of relief when he hears her heart still beating steadily. As she lies there shivering, he is deeply perplexed, wondering what could have possibly driven this stranger to do something so incredibly extreme. Realizing she needs immediate professional help, he quickly pulls out his phone to call for an ambulance. However, his relief is instantly cut short when he taps the screen. Realizing in absolute panic that his phone has died at the worst possible moment, he holds his face in his hands, feeling like he is about to lose his mind as the gravity of the situation sinks in. Looking around the empty bridge steps, he realizes there is absolutely nobody around to help them. To make matters worse, both of their clothes are completely soaked, and he can feel their body temperatures starting to drop rapidly in the cold night air. Shivering uncontrollably, he realizes that if they stay out here like this, they both might die of hypothermia. He grits his teeth, realizing that the closest warm shelter from here is his own apartment. Dragging himself and the unconscious stranger back to his place, his heavy gasps echo through his small kitchen as he struggles to carry her on his back. With a pained groan, he finally makes it into his room and gently lays her down onto his floor mattress. Collapsing onto the floor beside her, he lets out an exhausted sigh, incredibly relieved that they barely made it back alive. He leans over her, shaking her gently and begging her to wake up, but she remains completely unresponsive. Deciding that he must warm her up first, he grabs a dry blanket and prepares to cover her with it. But as he pulls the blanket over her shivering body, she suddenly lets out a weak, pained groan, catching him completely off guard. The unconscious woman weakly groans that it hurts, her breathing shallow and ragged. Our young protagonist immediately realizes how critical the situation is, noticing that her fever is rapidly getting worse when he places his hand on her forehead. He realizes that wrapping her in a warm blanket while she is still wearing soaking wet clothes would only make her condition worse. Swallowing his nervousness, he makes the difficult decision to remove her wet outer jackets, immediately reacting in complete shock once the task is done. She is left lying in her jacket, shivering heavily from her fever. Though this is his very first time seeing a woman in person, he can't help but admire her incredible physical conditioning. But as he looks closer, his eyes widen in surprise as he notices bright red spots suddenly appearing on her shoulders. This triggers a memory, reminding him of a unique conditioning ability he possesses that others do not. He is able to see special red spots on people's bodies that indicate areas of physical distress. He recalls his school days when he would use this ability to target those specific spots, prompting the school delinquents to praise his unbelievable muscle-releasing techniques. While his peers fought over who would get his targeted physical therapy sessions next, his success had a bitter side effect. Because he was so good at it, he unfortunately ended up becoming their personal massage servant all throughout his school years. Bringing his mind back to the present, he looks at the red spots on her shoulders, realizing that just like back then, targeting these specific pressure points might be the key to saving her. Positioning himself behind her, he prepares to administer a specialized healing routine, confident that this muscle conditioning session will definitely help her recover. With absolute focus, he firmly presses his thumbs into the glowing red spots to begin his targeted therapy. As he begins the targeted physical therapy on her shoulders, she lets out a soft sigh of relief. The sudden sound completely startles Junhyun, but his focus returns as he notices the glowing red spots on her skin are actually starting to fade. He happily realizes that his treatment is definitely having a positive effect on her body. Deciding to continue the treatment, he targets the next set of spots located near her hands. As he applies firm pressure, she continues to make soft vocal reactions, clearly feeling the intense physical pressure of this precision grip training session as his hands work through the deep muscle tension. Sweating from the sheer effort, Junhyun tells himself that even though this is purely a medical massage, he must push through and begs her in his mind to hold on just a little longer. To get a better angle and maximize the pressure, he carefully mounts the mattress, straddling her legs, and promises that he will have her cured in no time. Panting heavily, he stays positioned over her torso, pushing through her deep muscle tension. To his great relief, he notices that the red spots on her body are almost completely gone. He gently massages her lower abdomen to finish the upper body routine, and when he checks her forehead once more, he is thrilled to realize that her fever is finally starting to drop. With the upper body conditioning successfully completed, he prepares to move on to the next step of the treatment. Looking down, he spots more glowing red areas. Just as he prepares to apply pressure, the unconscious woman slowly begins to flutter her eyes open. The unconscious woman lets out a soft sound, whispering that the treatment feels incredibly good. Hearing her vocal reaction completely flusters Junhyun, catching him off guard. Suddenly, she bolts upright on the mattress, startling him so badly that he lets out a terrified yelp. Now awake, she sits facing him in her jacket, and an awkward, heavy silence falls over the entire room as they stare at each other. Desperate to break the ice, he nervously begins to speak, realizing that she might completely misunderstand the situation she has just woken up to. He frantically waves his hands to explain that his intentions were purely medical and that he was only trying to cure her fever. But before he can even finish his explanation, she suddenly reaches out and grabs him by the hand, pulling him close and cutting him off, showing an unexpected endurance training trick. As Junhyun is pulled inside her fridge, his heart races with panic, leaving him completely unsure of what to do, as he wonders if he should just let this beautiful stranger show him beautiful tricks. But before he can make sense of his racing thoughts, the young woman's eyes snap wide open, and she suddenly pushes him back by the neck, halting their contact in an instant. Looking completely dazed, Jin Ah-young weakly asks why he is stopping, mumbling in her confusion that she could easily keep going with this intense conditioning session. Junhyun stands frozen and deeply embarrassed, but the moment of confusion quickly passes as Ah-young finally takes a proper look at his face. Panting heavily, she blushes deeply and demands to know exactly who he is. Before he can even begin to explain himself, the terrifying reality of the situation hits her, and she lets out a loud, piercing scream that echoes far outside into the quiet night. Scrambling backward to the edge of the mattress, Ah-young trembles with fear and fiercely warns him not to come any closer, demanding to know what kind of person he is. Junhyun frantically waves his hands in the air, pleading with her to remain calm. He gestures toward her hands and gently suggests that she should first put down the object she is holding before they try to talk. Looking down in confusion, she realizes she has instinctively grabbed a peculiar, plastic massage tool to defend herself. Mortified and furious, she immediately hurls the workout tool straight at his head, shouting at him to get away from her and calling him a sick bastard as she demands to know where on earth he has brought her. Junhyun barely manages to block the flying object, raising his voice to command her to calm down so he can finally explain the entire situation. The sudden authority in his voice causes her to freeze, and she looks at him with wide, quiet eyes. As a heavy silence falls over the room, she looks down and wraps her arms around herself as the memories of her desperate leap from the bridge slowly flood back, prompting her to softly admit that she finally remembers what happened. Now wrapped safely in a dry gray blanket, Ah-young sits quietly against the wall, while Junhyun sits cross-legged on the floor at a respectful distance. He gently tells her that he now understands the gravity of her situation, explaining that while he might not know the reasons behind her extreme actions, he simply could not stand by and let her die. He describes how his phone was completely ruined by the river water, making it impossible to call an ambulance, and explains that with both of them soaking wet in the freezing cold, he had no choice but to bring her to his nearby apartment to save them from hypothermia. With earnest sincerity, Junhyun assures her that he did absolutely nothing sussy, explaining that her wet jackets had to be removed to manage the sudden, dangerous fever that took hold of her. He gently concludes by advising her that she is still far too young to make such a reckless decision with her life, hoping his words will bring her some comfort after such a terrifying night. As she sits on the mattress, Jin Ah-young gently touches her forehead and realizes with a sigh of relief that her fever has definitely broken, and even her heavy hangover is completely gone, leaving her head feeling remarkably refreshed. Looking down, she begins to reflect on the hazy moments when she was drifting in and out of consciousness, quietly acknowledging to herself that despite being half asleep, the physical treatment she received from Junhyun actually felt incredibly good. With a deep blush spreading across her cheeks, she looks up and hesitantly asks him if he could possibly perform that same routine on her just one more time. Completely stunned by her sudden request, Junhyun blinks in surprise and stammers as he asks her what exactly she wants him to do. Turning her head slightly in embarrassment, Ah-young clarifies that she is talking about what he did earlier, referring to his specialized therapy session. The realization immediately clicks for Junhyun, and his mind begins to race as he wonders what is going on with this woman, questioning if she really enjoyed his unique conditioning style that much. Sensing a rare opportunity, he swallows his nervousness and wonders if he should try his luck, quickly speaking up to say that he can absolutely do it, though he hopes she won't take his words the wrong way. Fidgeting nervously with his hands, he explains to her that in order to receive a proper, full-body training session, she will need to wear her remaining jackets. To his absolute astonishment, Ah-young calmly cuts him off and says she already knows what needs to be done. Without a single moment of hesitation, she lets the blanket slide off her shoulders, kneeling directly in front of him on the mattress. As Junhyun stares in wide-eyed shock, she assures him that she won't misunderstand his intentions, so he shouldn't worry. Blushing intensely, she crosses her arms and softly asks if he can do the training properly for her this time, casually wearing her jacket and placing it on the floor right before his eyes. Junhyun's heart beats wildly against his chest as he stares down in utter disbelief, reflecting on how he never actually expected his nervous proposal to work. Feeling completely overwhelmed by the sudden turn of events, he desperately tries to maintain his professionalism, frantically stammering that she really must not misinterpret his actions. As his panic peaks, he holds up his hands and pleads with her to wait and stop, but a heavily blushing Ah-young simply pants softly, looking up at him while whispering that this is already more than enough for them to begin their proper training session. Although Junhyun eagerly suggests that continuing their conditioning session will make her feel even better, Jin Ah-young gently declines, assuring him that she has already had plenty of treatment. Fully dressed once again, in her white shirt and blue jacket, Ah-young turns to him and warmly expresses her gratitude for his kind hospitality before abruptly announcing her intention to head home. Junhyun is caught completely off guard by her sudden decision, frantically raising his hands and questioning why she would want to venture out at such a late hour. He desperately tries to persuade her to stay, suggesting that it would be much safer to rest a bit longer and leave the next morning instead. Ignoring his protests, Ah-young reaches for the doorknob but pauses for a brief moment, turning back to look at him as a wave of confusion washes over his face. She pulls out a small blue business card, quietly stating that she has one last thing to give him before she goes. With a deep blush spreading across her face, she shyly holds out the card and asks him to give her a call later if he is comfortable doing so. Before Junhyun can even gather his thoughts, she steps out of the apartment and lets the door click shut, leaving him standing completely alone in the middle of his quiet room. He gazes down at the card in his hand, which prominently displays the name Happy Aesthetic, utterly perplexed, as he wonders what this mysterious card is supposed to mean. A few days later, Junhyun finds himself walking along the bustling city streets, scratching his head in deep thought as he tries to navigate his way. He eventually stops right outside a commercial building and looks up, his eyes locking onto a sleek sign that reads, Happy Aesthetic. Standing at the entrance with a mixture of curiosity and nervousness, he quietly realizes that he has finally arrived at the location printed on her card. Upon entering the bright and modern interior of Happy Aesthetic, Junhyun is immediately greeted by the female receptionist, who asks to confirm if he is indeed Kang Junhyun. She casually points out that their shop exclusively caters to female clients, adding that his job interview will commence as soon as the owner arrives in just a short moment. This unexpected revelation leaves Junhyun completely bewildered, as he frantically tries to understand why this woman is talking about an interview. Hoping to clear up the confusion, he nervously scratches his head and explains that he actually came to meet a specific woman whom he had met just the day before. Rather than helping, the receptionist leans over the counter to closely inspect him, dryly observing that he does not look like a professional therapist at all. She openly wonders what their owner could have possibly heard about him to immediately schedule an interview. Before Junhyun can make sense of his strange situation, a towering, incredibly muscular bald man wearing dark sunglasses and a thick beard strides into the lobby, startling Junhyun half to death. The intimidating man apologizes for his lateness due to a traffic delay and warmly introduces himself as Choi Won-jae, the owner of Happy Aesthetic. Looking at this massive figure, Junhyun screams internally, questioning whether this man is truly a business owner or actually a high-ranking mob boss. Won-jae quickly explains that a woman named Jin Ah-young had contacted him late the previous night, which prompts Junhyun to ask who exactly he is talking about. Surprised by his ignorance, the owner explains that Ah-young had spoken highly of his incredible massage skills. Hearing this, Junhyun finally realizes that the mysterious stranger he rescued from the river is named Jin Ah-young. Before he can ask any further questions, Won-jae abruptly cuts him off and slides off his shirt, announcing that it is time to begin the evaluation and commanding Junhyun to massage his back. Although Junhyun is totally taken aback by this sudden request, the owner confidently explains that having worked in the beauty and massage industry for nearly 20 years, he can easily gauge a therapist's skill level from touch alone, encouraging him to simply relax and perform his routine. Junhyun desperately tries to protest that he never came here for a job, but his voice fades as he looks at the massive man sitting before him. Despite Won-jae's incredibly powerful and muscular physique, Junhyun's unique conditioning vision suddenly kicks in, and he stands frozen as glowing red distress spots begin to light up across the owner's neck, shoulders, and lower back. Junhyun realizes there is no helping his current situation and decides to perform his usual routine first. He gently places his hands on Choi Won-jae's neck and starts applying firm pressure, slowly working his deep tissue technique down the owner's massive, muscular back. As the physical therapy continues, Won-jae's eyes snap wide open behind his sunglasses in absolute shock, internally gasping as he feels the immediate, incredible impact of the touch. Suddenly, the owner shouts for Junhyun to stop because that is more than enough, bolting upright from his seat in an instant. Completely startled, Junhyun wonders what is wrong since he barely even started the routine, nervously scratching his head as he asks if his technique was actually that bad. Blushing deeply, Won-jae turns around and confesses that he has recently been suffering from a severe mana energy blockage, which had left him completely unable to participate in any partner-based endurance training sessions with his wife. However, he joyfully reveals that the very moment he felt Junhyun's hands, his deep mana energy blockages were completely cleared, leaving him feeling unbelievably healthy and energetic once again. Shouting that he needs to rush home right this second to start a full-body conditioning session with his wife, the ecstatic owner sprints out of the room. Junhyun stands alone, completely dumbfounded by the bizarre turn of events, hearing the front door slam shut as the owner yells for his wife to wait for him, leaving our protagonist wondering what is supposed to happen to him now. Just as he is wallowing in his confusion, the female receptionist suddenly bursts back into the treatment room, catching his attention. Swaying gracefully as she approaches, she asks if he has any other plans for the rest of the day, and when he nervously confirms that he is free, she explains that the owner was so amazed by his unbelievable hands that he wants him to immediately fill in for one of their regular staff members. Grabbing his hand, she quickly drags him out of the room, leaving a bewildered Junhyun to question why he has to start working right here and now. She glances back, explaining that one of their therapists was recently rejected by a demanding client, leaving Junhyun to internally question what kind of savage establishment he has walked into, completely baffled by how he managed to get hired the absolute second he arrived. Leading him down the hallway, the receptionist calls out to a red-haired therapist named Lee Yoon-do. Junhyun watches as a coworker fiercely scolds Yoon-do, questioning how she can remain so incredibly laid back after receiving yet another heavy complaint from a disappointed client, before telling her to just clean up the room if she has nothing better to do. As Yoon-do turns her head to look back at them with a calm, indifferent gaze, Junhyun's eyes widen in surprise as he looks at her, completely captivated by her presence. Looking at the stunning red-haired therapist, Junhyun is completely captivated, silently noting how incredibly pretty she is. He can barely believe that such a gorgeous woman was actually rejected by a client, confirming to himself that Lee Yoon-do must indeed be a fellow therapist at this establishment. Rather than acknowledging them, Yoon-do simply walks past while casually scrolling on her phone, completely ignoring their presence and leaving the receptionist deeply irritated by her incredibly rude and dismissive attitude. Shaking off her annoyance, the receptionist turns back to Junhyun and tells him to hurry up and change into a uniform because his first client is already waiting. She warns him that this particular client is exceptionally finicky and difficult to please, advising him to take extreme care, which causes a nervous Junhyun to blush deeply and swallow hard as the pressure of the moment sinks in. Upon entering the luxurious treatment room, they find a frustrated female client lying on her stomach, complaining loudly about the terrible quality of her previous session. She explains that she had asked her previous therapist to locate and target her sore areas, but the therapist instead performed a completely random routine, making a mockery of her supposed professional status. The receptionist profusely apologizes for the inconvenience, explaining that the previous staff member was merely a beginner who had just started. Eager to resolve the issue, the receptionist pushes Junhyun forward, proudly announcing that she has brought a far more skilled specialist to take over her conditioning session. The client turns her head in surprise, skeptically questioning whether they are truly certain about a male therapist's abilities. Junhyun internally panics, wishing he could tell them both that he only just started working today, but the receptionist confidently reassures the client, stating that even their highly critical shop owner fully acknowledges Junhyun's superior talent. Reluctantly accepting the recommendation, the client agrees to trust their judgment and allows Junhyun to proceed with her treatment. The receptionist hands him a bottle of massage oil, letting him know that she is counting on him to deliver an exceptional performance, before exiting the room and shutting the door to leave them in private. Left alone in the room, the client impatiently asks why he is just standing there and demands that he begin his routine immediately, prompting a flustered Junhyun to quickly agree. Trying to find a starting point, he politely asks what specific areas have been bothering her, but the finicky client snaps back that she does not know either, which is precisely why she is asking a professional to find and resolve the deep muscle tension. Although Junhyun is momentarily taken aback by her incredibly sharp temper, a wave of calm confidence quickly washes over him as he realizes her lack of knowledge is actually a perfect advantage for his abilities. Activating his unique conditioning vision, his eyes lock onto her lower back and the areas beneath her waist, where bright, glowing red spots of physical distress suddenly become visible, instantly revealing to him exactly where all her hidden muscle tension is located. Without further delay, Junhyun applies a generous amount of massage oil to his hands and prepares to address the areas causing her discomfort. As the client sighs heavily and impatiently urges him to just hurry up, Junhyun calmly reassures her that he is going to take a close look and locate the exact source of her physical distress. Positioning himself to target the glowing red spots, Junhyun firmly presses his hands onto the muscles around her lower back, gently commenting that the tension in this area is incredibly tight. The client sighs softly under his touch, beginning to dismissively state that the previous therapist had already tried doing that same thing. But before she can even finish her sentence, her eyes suddenly snap wide open in absolute shock as a wave of intense relief washes over her body. She finds herself completely overwhelmed and speechless, frantically questioning what on earth is happening as Junhyun works his hands through her deep muscle tension, initiating an incredibly effective grip training and conditioning session that leaves her completely stunned by the sheer power and precision of his technique. The session draws to a close, and both of them are panting heavily from the sheer intensity of the routine. The blonde client gratefully thanks Junhyun, blushing as she confesses that she has not felt this incredible in a very long time. Junhyun blushes in return and happily replies that he also felt amazing during their time together, expressing his sincere gratitude to his very first customer. Out at the front desk, the receptionist is absolutely thrilled to find out that the client wants to sign up for a VIP membership with Junhyun designated as her primary therapist. Teasingly pointing out that Junhyun must have left her incredibly satisfied, the receptionist smiles as the client bashfully admits that his amazing skills left her with absolutely no other choice. Calling out to Junhyun, the receptionist happily informs him that the customer has just purchased 5 sessions with him, instructing him to make sure he takes excellent care of her in the future. Flustered but grateful, Junhyun thanks them both as the client looks back with a soft smile, giggling happily as she bids him farewell until their next scheduled session. Once they are alone, the receptionist compliments Junhyun, noting that securing a VIP client on his very first day proves he must be exceptionally skilled. Confused by the terminology, Junhyun timidly asks what a VIP service actually entails, prompting the receptionist to explain that it translates directly to extra income. She details how being selected for VIP sessions earns him substantial financial incentives and encourages him to keep building his private client base. Wrapping up the day, she praises his hard work and tells him to head home for some rest, reminding him not to be late the next morning. On his way out, Junhyun's mind races with excitement as he realizes that he gets to participate in 5 more high-intensity conditioning sessions with that same client. Later that night in his apartment, Junhyun lies flat on his back on his floor mattress, letting out a long, contemplative sigh as he stares at the ceiling. He reflects on the day's events, completely astonished by the realization that they actually ended up engaging in a wholesome training sesh, and he can still feel the lingering phantom tingles of that deep conditioning session. Rolling onto his side, he happily tells himself how incredible the physical workout felt and how desperately he wants to experience it again, fully convinced that accepting this therapy job was the best decision he has ever made. But just as he is drifting off into peaceful thoughts, a sudden, loud knocking at his front door startles him. Sitting up abruptly on his mattress, Junhyun looks toward the entryway in complete confusion, wondering who could possibly be visiting him at such a late hour. Walking over to his front door, Junhyun slowly pulls it open to see who is on the other side. Peering out into the dimly lit hallway, he begins to ask who is there, only to freeze mid-sentence in absolute shock. Standing directly on his doorstep is none other than Jin Ah-young, dressed in a clean white-collared shirt and a simple apron. She looks at him with a warm, gentle smile, leaving Junhyun completely stunned and speechless as he struggles to process her sudden late-night appearance. Sitting opposite each other in his room with 2 warm mugs placed between them, an incredibly awkward silence initially hangs over the space. Desperate to break the ice, Junhyun happily announces that he managed to secure a job at the massage shop. Jin Ah-young is delighted, offering her warm congratulations as he humbly explains that it is entirely thanks to her introduction, as the shop owner happens to know his former teacher. Ah-young laughs softly, pleased to hear how everything worked out so well. After another brief quiet pause, a blushing Junhyun hesitantly asks her why she decided to come all the way to his apartment tonight. Bowing her head politely, Ah-young explains that she has been deeply troubled by her failure to properly thank him for saving her life on the bridge. Junhyun frantically waves his hands in the air, telling her that it is absolutely fine and that she should not worry about it at all. Silently telling himself that asking about her reasons for being on the Han River Bridge would be incredibly rude, Junhyun keeps his curiosity to himself, instead pointing out that she looked quite unhealthy the last time he saw her, though she now seems to be doing wonderfully. Blushing softly, Ah-young quietly credits her recovery to his help. Realizing they have still not formally introduced themselves, she looks up with rosy cheeks and introduces herself as Jin Ah-young, explaining that she runs a small cafe. She slides over a gift box, explaining that she baked some homemade cookies for him because she simply could not bear to show up empty-handed. Receiving the gift, Junhyun realizes that she is not a worker at the massage parlor, as he had originally assumed, but is actually a cafe owner. When she asks for his name in return, he happily shares that his name is Kang Junhyun, which she warmly praises as a very cool name. Ah-young then asks him how he is enjoying his new job, and Junhyun admits that while it is good, he is still a beginner and desperately lacks a regular partner to practice his massage routines on. Staring at him in quiet realization, Ah-young blushes deeply and suggests that it would be highly beneficial if they could start meeting up on a regular basis. Our boy is absolutely thrilled by Ah-young's suggestion that they should meet up more often, thinking to himself that he is completely on board with the idea. He stammers nervously, telling her that he should be the one thanking her, before bravely asking if he can get her phone number. Blushing, Ah-young readily agrees, reciting her phone digits as Junhyun prepares to share his own number in return. Just as he is about to speak, their peaceful meeting is shattered by a sudden, aggressive pounding at his front door. Both of them are deeply startled by the loud noise, and a panicked Junhyun wonders who could possibly be outside, politely asking her to excuse him for just a second, while she nods in quiet agreement. Pulling the door open slightly, Junhyun is immediately confronted by an incredibly angry Kim Seo-ah, who aggressively pushes the door open and demands to know why he has been ignoring all of her phone calls. Fuming with rage, she loudly lectures him, reminding him that she told him to check his messages for the final insurance signature, and scolds him for letting the policy remain incomplete due to his sudden disappearance. Junhyun screams internally, utterly horrified that Seo-ah decided to show up at his apartment of all times. Desperately trying to save face, he begs her to calm down and begs her to wait, but his frantic behavior only makes her suspicious. As he stands in his doorway, she asks who is inside and peers past his shoulder, completely on alert. Junhyun desperately tries to postpone the conversation and get her to leave, but his efforts are cut short when Ah Young quietly stands up behind him. Noting that it seems like they have some very important business to discuss, Ah Young politely announces her departure. A panicked Junhyun desperately tries to stop her, waving his hands and insisting that the insurance issue is not important at all, but this only provokes Seo-ah further. Seo-ah loudly defends her business, snapping at him for calling her work unimportant and accusing him of talking nonsense, leaving a helpless Junhyun trying to stop the bickering while Ah Young quietly observes the chaotic scene. Realizing the situation has become too chaotic, Ah Young quietly bids him farewell and slips out of the apartment. Junhyun can only watch helplessly as she departs, while Kim Seo-ah casually pushes past him and walks right into his room as if she owns the place. Junhyun closes the door behind them, sighing in deep frustration and feeling intensely annoyed by her incredibly inconsiderate behavior. Sitting down on his floor, Seo-ah immediately spots the gift box Ah Young left behind and excitedly opens it, commenting on how pretty the other woman was and teasingly asking if he had borrowed money from her. Junhyun, rubbing his neck in exhaustion, tells her that he is incredibly tired from his long day of work and asks her to please just leave. Seo-ah dismisses his plea entirely, scoffing at the idea of him working when she firmly believes he is nothing more than an unemployed deadbeat. Before he can even process the insult, she aggressively bites into one of Ah Young's homemade cookies, casually asking if it is okay for her to eat them, despite already stuffing her face. Junhyun desperately tries to keep his temper in check, taking a deep breath and telling her to just finish the cookies and go home, promising that he will sign the electronic insurance document later. Completely ignoring his boundaries, Seo-ah tells him that he is being ridiculous and demands that he do it right this second. She lazily lies down on his floor mattress, complaining that she chose a great insurance deal for him out of friendship, and claims that it is incredibly rude of him to act so distant now when he was so happy to accept her proposal at the pub. She sighs in mock disappointment, telling Kang Junhyun how thoroughly let down she is by his attitude. Staring at her in silent disbelief, Junhyun begins to question why she keeps calling him a friend when she clearly does not mean it. He realizes that she only targeted him because he was an easy mark to secure a quick sales quota, clenching his fist tightly as he reflects on how she has always used him, knowing full well that he harbored a massive crush on her for years. Finally reaching his absolute limit, Junhyun's anger boils over, and he verbally lashes out, demanding to know what on earth she means by calling them friends. Seo-ah completely freezes mid-bite, staring at him in stunned silence as she holds the half-eaten cookie. Stepping closer with his fist still tightly clenched, Junhyun asks her if she truly believes she sold him that insurance policy for his own benefit rather than her own selfish gain. Directly confronting Kim Seo-ah, Junhyun demands to know if she is actually the one using their friendship for her own personal benefit. He asks her if she honestly considers him a friend after everything that has happened, concluding firmly that she does not, and demanding to know if she truly thinks of him as her friend at all. Startled by his sudden boldness, Seo-ah sweat drops and nervously asks why he is talking to her in such a harsh manner. Junhyun fires back, asking if he has said anything wrong, and points out that she only ever contacts him when she needs something. He asks her if she genuinely believed he would never find out his true standing in her life, addressing her by name as he highlights her clear exploitation of their past relationship. His resentment boils over as he reminds her of the painful days in high school when he was treated as a complete loser and forced to act as her personal bread shuttle. Taking a deep breath, he lets out a heavy, exhausted sigh and states that they should simply stop talking. Junhyun flatly apologizes, but firmly tells her to forget about the insurance policy entirely. He explains that he never wanted the insurance deal in the first place and has absolutely no intention of finalizing it now. Stunned into silence, Seo-ah can only gasp as Junhyun turns his back on her, preparing to close the door on their interaction. Panicking at the thought of losing her sale, Seo-ah begs him not to be like that and suddenly lunges forward, tackling him onto his floor mattress. Junhyun lets out a startled yelp, frantically demanding to know what on earth she thinks she is doing as they fall together. Tearfully pinning herself to him, Seo-ah desperately begs for his forgiveness and pleads with him to help her out just this once. She tearfully confesses that she is currently facing her worst sales performance of the month, and if he decides to cancel the policy, she will undoubtedly be fired from her job. Pressing her hands together in a desperate, pleading gesture, she tearfully begs him to reconsider, promising that if he just signs the policy, she will do absolutely whatever he wants. Panicked about losing her sales quota, Seoa nervously asks him if they should go on an outing sometime soon, suggesting they could search for nice restaurants or even catch a movie together. Reflecting on her desperate promise to do whatever he wants, Junhyun smirks and asks if she is truly willing to do absolutely anything he asks of her. Looking up at him from her knees, Seoa enthusiastically agrees, pressing her hands together and begging him once more not to cancel his insurance policy. Finding her desperate submission satisfactory, Junhyun flatly notes that her cooperative attitude is good. With a calm and incredibly serious expression, he commands her to wear a jacket so they can get started with her high-intensity training session. Completely shocked by his sudden demand, Seoa gasps, asking him to clarify his words. When she hesitates, Junhyun's gaze darkens, and he asks if she did not hear him the first time, sternly repeating his command for her to wear her jackets over her clothes. Junhyun explains to the shocked girl that he now works at a professional massage shop. Hearing this unexpected news, Seoa is completely stunned and struggles to process the idea of him working in such an establishment. He calmly confirms the reality of his new job and tells her that he would love to practice his techniques on her, though he casually points out that she will need to wear all of her jackets in order to receive the full treatment. This sudden proposal completely outrages Seoa, who immediately drops to her knees and crosses her arms defensively as she blushes with embarrassment. When he asks if she will go through with it, she angrily yells that he must be losing his mind, firmly declaring that his request is completely unreasonable and has crossed a line. However, he quickly reminds her of her previous promise, calmly pointing out that she had just agreed to do absolutely anything he wanted. Her anger instantly turns to worry, as she realizes that refusing his request might mean losing the precious insurance contract she desperately needs to save her job. Sensing her hesitation, he casually turns his back and suggests that if she is really that against the idea, they can just forget about the deal entirely. Panicking at the thought of losing her sale, she frantically reaches out and tells him to stop, quickly giving in and agreeing to his conditions. Closing her eyes with a deep blush of embarrassment, she loudly declares that she will indeed wear her clothes for the session. Without further hesitation, she begins to wear her black top over her head, preparing herself for what she believes is a high-intensity conditioning session. As she continues to wear her jacket, she nervously warns him not to turn around and look at her just yet. She suspiciously asks if he is trying to sneak a peek, but he quickly turns his head away and huffs, assuring her that he is doing no such thing and telling her to just hurry up with the preparation. After a brief moment, she quietly announces that she is finally ready, leaving Junhyun to sweat and nervously remark that she certainly took a long time. Turning his head back, his eyes widen in absolute shock as he gets a clear view of her back, leaving him completely flustered as he tries to maintain his composure and shakily instructs her to lie down on the mattress first. She lets out a confused whisper, wrapping a gray blanket tightly around her front to cover herself as she sits on the floor. Spotting his intense gaze, she blushes and demands to know what exactly he is staring at. He quickly turns his face away with a bright red blush, stammering that he was not looking at anything, while she self-consciously clarifies that she only dressed for the sole purpose of receiving his treatment. Standing up to adjust her position, she sternly warns him that he had better not be harboring any other sussy thoughts during the session. Feeling completely overwhelmed by the intense visual of her side profile, a highly flustered Junhyun can only yell back, frantically telling her to just hurry up and lie down on the mattress. Taking a deep breath, she slowly lies flat on her stomach, silently telling herself to endure this difficult situation since she has no other choice if she wants to secure her insurance sale. Meanwhile, Junhyun sits nearby and prepares his materials, explaining that since he does not have any massage gel on hand, he will be using standard lotion instead. As she listens to him prep, she bitterly reflects in her mind that as soon as this routine is over and the contract is signed, they will be completely finished with each other. With the preparation finally complete, he positions himself over her back to begin the full-body training sesh. Shivering with nervous anticipation on the gray mattress, she buries her face in her crossed arms and weakly whispers for him to just go ahead and do what he wants, marking the official start of their intense conditioning session. After their intense session concludes, Junhyun asks Seoa if she is planning to head home soon, catching her completely off guard. Sitting on the floor and looking away to give her some privacy, he tells her to hurry up, while a blushing Seoa explains that she is currently wearing her jacket and asks him to wait just a little longer. As she pulls her black top back over her head, she quietly reflects that she needs to get to bed soon, so she can make it to work the next day. Once she is fully dressed, she turns to Junhyun and shyly inquires if he might happen to be free again sometime in the near future. When he asks for the reason behind her question, she hesitates, admitting that she genuinely feels terrible about how poorly she treated him earlier in the day. She extends a soft peace offering, explaining that she wants to treat him to dinner or something similar as a sincere apology. Her sudden change in attitude immediately raises suspicion in his mind, and he silently wonders why she is suddenly offering an apology out of the blue. He quickly concludes that she must be trying to manipulate him into buying more insurance, firmly telling himself that there is absolutely no chance he will fall for it again. Deciding to put some distance between them, he tells her that he is far too busy now that he has a proper job, urging her to hurry up and make her exit. Seo looks thoroughly disappointed but persists, pointing out that he must have at least some days off, but he simply reiterates his uncertainty. Desperate to keep their connection alive, she asks where exactly he works so that she can drop by and visit, pleading with him to share the location. Letting out a heavy sigh, Junhyun finally relents and promises that he will text her the details later. She is thrilled by this promise, eagerly asking if he is truly serious, and reminding him that he must absolutely message her. Peeking through the small crack of the closing door, she issues a playful yet serious warning about what will happen if he dares to ghost her again. With a final slam, the front door shuts, and Junhyun simply bids her to get home safely. Standing alone in the hallway outside his apartment, Seo suddenly freezes, clutching her purse tightly as a wave of intense memories washes over her body. Shivering with a sudden rush of excitement, she realizes she is completely losing her mind, reflecting on how incredible their conditioning session felt. Even though they had just completed a full-body training sesh twice, she finds herself deeply flushed and craving another round of his intense endurance training. Sometime later, the scene shifts to the exterior of the Happy Aesthetic Salon, where the boisterous owner is loudly praising Junhyun for his remarkable performance. Inside the lobby, Choi Won-jae enthusiastically slaps his hands on Junhyun's shoulders, declaring that securing a VIP client on his very first day is proof that he possesses an undeniable gift for physical therapy. Junhyun bashfully laughs it off, suggesting that the owner is being far too kind. Won-jae quickly encourages him to keep working hard, explaining that he will receive substantial commissions based on the number of clients who specifically request his services, prompting Junhyun to respectfully promise that he will give it his absolute best. However, a small dilemma quickly arises as Won-jae reflects on their next steps. He explains that as the owner of the establishment, he would normally guide his new employee through their official massage and conditioning manual, but his busy schedule today makes that impossible. Hearing this, Junhyun is left slightly puzzled, wondering what kind of instructional guide the owner is referring to. Turning toward the front desk, Won-jae calls out to the receptionist, Esul, and asks if there happens to be a manager currently free to take over the training, prompting her to thoughtfully respond as she considers who is available. With a knowing smile, Esul happily confirms that they indeed have a therapist available to guide the newcomer. Rather than just helping out for a brief moment, the receptionist plans to completely hand over the task of mentoring Junhyun to Lee Yundu. The red-haired trainer stands quietly, looking completely indifferent as the decision is made. Esul formally requests that Yundu lead Junhyun through the shop's training manual, though Yundu immediately tries to deflect by claiming that she is currently busy. The receptionist is not having it, dryly pointing out that Yundu has been staring at her phone all day, playfully questioning if she is supposed to be massaging the device instead of working. Shrugging off the complaint, the receptionist adds that this task comes directly as a command from the shop owner, leaving Yundu with no choice but to drop her objections and reluctantly agree to get started with the lesson. As they move to a treatment room to begin their training session, Yundu asks if he has ever learned the proper techniques for performing a facial massage. Junhyun nervously confesses that he has absolutely no background in massage therapy whatsoever. Hearing this, she instructs him to lie flat on his back so she can begin with a demonstration, prompting him to respectfully agree. She goes on to explain the basics, noting that while clients usually receive full-body conditioning, some will occasionally request targeted routines focusing specifically on smaller areas like the face or feet. Standing at the head of the table, Yundu gently places her hands on his face to begin the demonstration. Junhyun lies perfectly still, blushing with intense nervousness as her fingers make contact with his skin. She guides him through the process, explaining that the routine must start by working down along the neck and collarbone. As she leans forward to lift the jawline and gently massage the cheeks, a highly flustered Junhyun can only nod along, quietly agreeing that he understands the technique. Stopping for a moment, she asks him how the pressure feels and if the technique is comfortable for him. Although he quickly assures her that the routine feels wonderful, he silently admits to himself that her skills are actually quite mediocre. He reflects on how her hands feel incredibly soft and tender, yet her strength control seems completely off, concluding that she does not actually seem very skilled at all. However, as he looks up at her from the massage table, his thoughts quickly drift away from her technique. He realizes that, just as he thought when he first laid eyes on her, she is truly an exceptionally beautiful woman. He gets completely lost in her appearance, silently admiring her pale skin and remarkably pretty eyes. Staring up at her facial features, he notes that she looks almost like a perfect doll, concluding that her face is far prettier than either Jin Ah-young or Kim Seo-ah. In his mind, he playfully notes that the only possible flaw he could ever find is that her build is a little on the smaller side. Yet, he quickly dismisses the thought, deciding that her face is simply that of a goddess. He drifts into a wild, hypothetical daydream, concluding that if a woman with such an incredible face were to ever invite him to participate in a high-intensity, partner-based endurance training session, he would absolutely agree to join her in an instant. Suddenly, Junhyun is startled out of his quiet daydream, his eyes widening in complete shock as he realizes his inner thoughts might not be as secret as he had hoped. Leaning in, Yoon-do catches him completely off guard by asserting that he definitely did it, leaving Junhyun thoroughly flustered and sweating as he desperately tries to play dumb. He nervously stammers, asking what exactly she is talking about to stall for time. However, she refuses to back down, calmly explaining that he was staring directly at her face just a moment ago. With a sussy, knowing smirk spreading across her lips, she leans down and confidently accuses him of fantasizing about an intense, full-body training sesh with her. Junhyun lies flat on his back on the massage table, blushing deeply as he looks up at Yoon-do, completely caught off guard by her sudden proximity. He stammers in confusion, wondering what she is doing and why she is suddenly leaning to his face. Looking down at him, Yoon-do lets out a soft, teasing smile before bursting into loud, energetic laughter, finding his flustered reaction absolutely hilarious. Junhyun can only lie there in complete shock, deeply confused and wondering why she is laughing so hard at his expense. Still giggling, Yoon-do looks down at him and playfully wonders if he is just dim-witted or incredibly confident in himself. She explains that it is impossible for her not to laugh when he is experiencing such an obvious reaction, pointing directly at the massive, involuntary muscle swelling bulging under his shorts. Junhyun looks down and panics, completely mortified by his body's undeniable physical readiness during their training. He frantically turns his head away, desperately trying to claim that the situation is not what she thinks, but she simply coyly touches her cheek and teasingly agrees that she is indeed pretty sussy. She then asks if his reaction would get even bigger if she showed him a little more technique. Junhyun stares in absolute shock, his face turning bright red as he tells her to stop and insists his reaction is not like that, while she continues to laugh, leaving him wondering what kind of girl he has encountered. As he watches her, he reflects on how completely different she is from the aloof first impression she gave off earlier. Yoon-do chuckles and lightly apologizes, admitting that she might have gone a bit too far with her teasing. However, she giggles once more, explaining that his obvious reaction was simply too funny for her to ignore. Looking away, Junhyun finds himself thinking that this playful side of her is actually incredibly cute and pretty. Still flustered, he admits to himself that he simply cannot figure out what kind of person she truly is. Grabbing a towel, Yoon-do wraps up her demonstration and asks if he now understands the basic way to perform a face massage, to which he can only weakly agree. He silently reflects on how incredibly direct she is with her actions, and yet there is still so much more to her character. Turning back to him, Yoon-do asks if he indeed performed a full-body massage on his first client the previous day. Junhyun confirms that he did, but quickly clarifies that he only worked on the client's back and bottom. Yoon-do looks thoughtful, realizing the client was only in a face-down position during that session. Her casual, mature attitude only flusters him more as she easily shrugs off these topics like simple jokes, leaving him feeling like he has never met anyone quite like her. To his surprise, she decides that they will need to switch positions so she can demonstrate the face-up routine for him. Before he can even process her words, Yoon-do calmly wears a jacket. A highly panicked Junhyun scrambles back, frantically telling her to wait and demanding to know what on earth she is doing. Yoon-do stops and looks at him with a puzzled expression, wondering what he means and asking why he is reacting so heavily to her wearing jackets. With calm logic, she looks him in the eye and asks if he honestly expected himself, a male therapist, to work for the demonstration instead. Junhyun stands completely speechless, his face burning with embarrassment as she turns her back, showing her incredibly toned muscles, and reminds him that this is a female-only aesthetic shop, making it much more practical for her to be the one demonstrating the proper conditioning session. Yoon-do casually explains that he will obviously need to perform a massage on her now. She prepares to lie down flat on her back on the massage table. Junhyun watches her in absolute awe, silently reflecting on how truly incredible her muscles are. He admits to himself that while he previously assumed a slimmer build might be less impressive, she is actually remarkably attractive in her own unique way. He quickly catches himself, realizing that this is definitely a trap, and that he must resist the bait no matter what to maintain his professional composure. Shaking with the sheer effort of controlling his natural instincts, he successfully keeps himself from losing control. Yoon-do looks up in surprise, noting that his rationality has actually managed to defeat his instincts this time. Still trembling with intense frustration, Junhyun quietly warns her that he is going to get genuinely angry if she continues to mess with him like this. Sensing his frustration, Yoon-do reaches up and instructs him to give her his hands. Though slightly confused by the request, Junhyun reluctantly complies and places his hands into hers while still positioned over her torso. He wonders what she is planning to do next, but before he can even finish his thought, she suddenly pulls his hands directly down onto her bag to demonstrate a proper endurance training session. Yoon-do observes his flustered state with a smirk, noting that he seems to be having a highly challenging time managing his endurance because of her. Junhyun, blushing and sweating profusely, stammeringly asks if that is truly the case. Leaning in, she coyly wonders if he is actually planning to take care of his intense buildup right then and there. But before he can even process the thought, she suddenly flashes a bright smile and confesses that she was only lying to him. Junhyun is left completely stunned and frozen on the spot, unable to believe how easily he was played. Yoon-do stands up to stretch, casually asking if he has lost his mind to think she would actually engage in a full-body training sesh at their professional workplace. She adds that the establishment is certainly not some training facility. Feeling thoroughly humiliated, a blushing Junhyun points his finger and half-seriously threatens to report her for harassment. However, Yoon-do retorts that such accusations shouldn't be coming from someone who experienced an involuntary muscle peak just from looking at her form. Preparing to make her exit, she grabs the doorknob and bids him farewell, admitting that the conditioning practice was actually quite fun. She wishes him a good day, specifically addressing him as Masseur Kang Junhyun. Sitting alone on the table, a bewildered Junhyun can only blink in shock, suddenly realizing with utter confusion that she somehow already knew his full name. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the exterior balcony of the building, where Lee Yeon-do stands enjoying a quiet break. She pulls out her phone to message her friends, casually sharing that a new male trainer has officially joined their female-only establishment. Her friends quickly reply in absolute shock, questioning how such a sussy thing could happen at a female-only shop, and eagerly asking if this new trainer is good-looking or attractive. Shaking her head at her friend's wild curiosity, Yoon-do texts back that she isn't entirely sure, since he looks a bit like a loser at first glance. However, she quickly sends another message admitting that his training felt absolutely incredible, revealing that his hand endurance routine left her completely overwhelmed. Her friends laugh in disbelief, playfully questioning her sanity and pressing for more details, demanding to know how effective his conditioning style felt. They eventually tell her to forget all those minor details and bluntly ask if she thinks his skills would translate well into a highly rewarding, partner-based fitness conditioning session. Staring down at her screen with a cigarette in hand, Yoon-do hesitates, a soft blush spreading across her cheeks as she thoughtfully considers their sussy question. Sitting inside a quiet restroom stall, Kang Junhyun groans in discomfort, feeling like his stomach is in absolute knots. He reflects on his painful state, realizing it is the direct consequence of having to forcefully suppress his training urges during his interaction with Yoon-do earlier. He sighs heavily, realizing that she utterly toyed with him and concluding that she is definitely not an ordinary woman. While trying to recover, his phone suddenly buzzes with multiple messages from Kim Seoa, who asks what he is doing, why he is leaving her on red, and pleads with him to call her. Junhyun stares at the screen in utter confusion, wondering what could possibly be going on with her. He briefly questions if the prominent Kim Seoa could have actually fallen for him simply because they had participated in an intense fitness conditioning session once before. However, he quickly dismisses the thought, chuckling to himself as he concludes that she must be plotting another scheme to get his signature on her insurance policy. Deciding that he should just keep ignoring her messages, Junhyun is suddenly interrupted when his phone rings with an incoming call from the receptionist, Shin Esul. He answers the call, only for Esul to immediately demand to know where he is at that very moment. When he explains that he is currently in the restroom, she jokingly asks if he actually lives there, complaining that she has been looking for him forever. Before a bewildered Junhyun can even fully process her annoyance, Esul instructs him to quickly wrap things up and get to the counter, revealing that the shop owner has been actively looking for him. Hurrying out of the restroom, Junhyun peeks around the corner and spots the towering owner, Choi Won-jae, engaged in a conversation with an elegant woman. Junhyun politely calls out to get the owner's attention, prompting Won-jae to turn around with delight and formally introduce him to the visitor, CEO Lee Mik-young. Looking at Junhyun, CEO Lee is pleasantly surprised, noting that he is much younger than she had anticipated after hearing Won-jae constantly sing his praises. She smiles warmly, letting her hand rest on her chin while observing him closely, thinking that he is indeed quite a handsome young man, and expressing how much more she is looking forward to their scheduled session. Won-jae then drops a massive revelation, explaining that because CEO Lee is a highly valued VVIP client, they will be performing a joint forehand conditioning session where he will personally lead the treatment with Junhyun acting as his hand-picked assistant. Preparing the necessary massage oils and towels, a deeply nervous Junhyun quietly questions if this arrangement is truly okay. He admits that she seems to be an incredibly important client and expresses his worry over his own severe lack of professional experience. Won-jae acknowledges his concerns with a confident smile, admitting that this decision is indeed a massive gamble on his part. He explains that if he wanted to play it safe, he would have easily chosen a much more experienced partner to assist him with the intense, high-intensity training session. Before entering the treatment room, the towering owner, Choi Won-jae, encourages Kang Junhyun, explaining that the muscle recovery technique he demonstrated during their previous session was indescribably amazing, and adds that he is highly counting on him for their routine today. Junhyun silently nods, gathering his composure as Won-jae suggests they head inside. Opening the door, Won-jae politely announces their arrival to CEO Lee Mik-young, who turns around in a simple white robe and warmly invites them inside. Won-jae asks if she has been waiting long, but she reassures them that she has only just finished preparing for her high-intensity conditioning session. Eager to get started, she suggests they begin the routine immediately, to which Won-jae readily agrees. Won-jae instructs Junhyun that he will handle the upper body conditioning, leaving the targeted leg endurance workout entirely to him. With the plan set, the client lies flat on her back on the mattress, and Junhyun takes his position at her feet to begin their collaborative, forehand training session. Blushing slightly as he gets a closer look at her remarkably fit physique, Junhyun tries to maintain his professional focus while she looks down at him and whispers that she is counting on his technique. As they work through the initial steps of the routine, Won-jae and the client engage in casual conversation. She sighs softly, admitting that meeting someone new after her divorce has been incredibly difficult because men constantly seem to disappoint her. Won-jae chuckles, working through her deep muscle tension while complimenting her as an incredibly successful and amazing woman. She then inquires if the owner's wife is doing well, and Won-jae proudly confirms that their relationship grows stronger with each passing day. Junhyun listens in silence as the client expresses a bit of playful jealousy over their happy marriage. Won-jae warmly assures her that she is far too beautiful not to meet someone wonderful soon, prompting her to laughingly complain about his endless flattery. Won-jae playfully insists that his compliments are entirely sincere as he continues his precision grip training. She quietly reflects that while her business is highly successful and she has plenty of money, there are still some things money simply cannot buy, pointing to youth as a prime example. She notes that as she grows older, she feels her natural energy starting to decline, but Won-jae quickly reassures her, laughing that her form is still more than capable of easily hiring any man in his 20s. Applying a generous amount of massage oil, Junhyun works his hands down her hands to continue her fitness conditioning. He silently agrees that while she might look a bit older, her skin is incredibly healthy. When she asks how her physical conditioning feels under his touch, Junhyun confirms that her skin feels absolutely great, proving that her constant dedication to personal care has kept her in prime shape. As they proceed with the treatment, Junhyun cannot help but admire how outstanding her muscle form truly is, but his focus quickly returns to his unique conditioning vision. Activating his specialized sight, he can clearly see countless red and blue distress spots lighting up across her body. These glowing marks indicating physical strain are heavily saturated, particularly around her lower core and hip flexor areas. Staring at these concentrated spots, Junhyun deduces that her physical distress seems to be a combination of general fatigue and deep-seated self-consciousness regarding her fitness stamina, which he suspects is likely due to her age. His thoughts are interrupted when Won-jae praises his form and instructs him to slowly transition his training up toward her abdomen, to which Junhyun respectfully agrees. At that moment, CEO Lee Mik-young turns her head to look at him and confirms his identity, asking if he is indeed Master Kang Junhyun. She warmly praises his abilities, declaring that he is definitely very skilled and admitting that her legs already feel much lighter. Flustered but grateful, Junhyun politely thanks her for the compliment. She then happily praises Won-jae for bringing such an amazing therapist to the establishment, prompting the proud owner to laughingly declare that Junhyun is destined to become the elite of their shop. Turning her attention back to Junhyun, the client pauses and asks him to share his completely honest opinion on how old she truly looks in his eyes. Scratching his head in deep embarrassment, Junhyun hesitantly responds that he genuinely thought she was in her early 30s, sheepishly wondering if his guess is wrong. Hearing this, CEO Lee covers her mouth and bursts into delighted giggles, thoroughly flattered by his youthful estimate. Won-jae joins in on the laughter, pointing out that she clearly still looks plenty young. She playfully asks if Won-jae personally trained all of his staff to be so incredibly good at flattery, clearly enjoying the supportive atmosphere of the conditioning session. As the lighthearted laughter fills the room, Junhyun maintains a warm smile but prepares to take a more direct approach with her treatment. He silently reflects that, while flattery is good, he might actually have to push his techniques a step further to truly relieve her distress. Sensing a sudden shift in his demeanor, both the owner and the client lock their eyes onto him, their expressions turning serious and alert as they wait to see what the young specialist will do next. Junhyun confidently suggests that he can actually make her body look as though she is still in her early 20s, catching the client completely off guard. CEO Lee Mik-young repeats his bold claim, expressing deep intrigue that he believes he can restore her physique to such a youthful state. While Won-jae watches the interaction closely, she curiously asks if his statement is simply another form of professional flattery. Blushing slightly, Junhyun quickly assures her that he is being entirely serious. However, he explains that in order to achieve such remarkable results, she must allow him to perform a high-intensity conditioning session on highly sussy muscle areas of her body. Hearing this sudden proposal, a panicked Won-jae quickly tries to intervene, warning Junhyun that he is crossing a professional boundary. But before the owner can finish his warning, CEO Lee calmly cuts him off and accepts the offer, stating that she is completely fine with it. In return, she firmly notes that his treatment will have to be highly effective, directly asking if he is truly confident in his ability to deliver such results. Holding his hands up with absolute determination, Junhyun confidently confirms that he is indeed ready for the challenge. Ready to demonstrate his skills, Junhyun places his hands firmly on her lower core to kick off the grip training session, announcing that he will now begin. As soon as he applies pressure, the client lets out a sharp gasp, her body tensing slightly as she feels the immediate, intense impact of his specialized muscle release technique. Encouraged by her reaction, Junhyun tells himself that everything is going well, deciding to focus his fitness conditioning entirely on targeting the glowing red distress spots he can clearly see on her body. As Junhyun applies his specialized pressure, CEO Lee Mik-young realizes that if this level of intensity keeps up, she is going to completely lose her composure under the sheer pressure of the workout. Watching her writhe and gasp in reaction, a concerned Won-jae suddenly panics, loudly commanding Junhyun to stop the routine immediately. He warns that pushing her muscles any further than this will be highly dangerous for her stamina. But just as the owner orders him to halt, Junhyun firmly cuts him off, urging him to wait. Junhyun explains with absolute seriousness that stopping the conditioning session at this crucial peak would actually be far worse for her muscles than if they had not started the workout at all. While the owner stands frozen in shock, Junhyun works his hands firmly along her body, emphasizing that they must push past this intense hump in their endurance training in order to witness the real, transformative physical change. He pleads with Won-jae to trust him just this once, promising that he will definitely not disappoint them. Seeing his absolute conviction, Won-jae finally relents and agrees to back him up. The owner instructs Junhyun to keep going with his intense routine while he continues managing her conditioning. Thanking him for his trust, Junhyun resumes the therapy, and together they execute a highly coordinated, full-body training sesh that leaves their client completely overwhelmed by the precision of their touch. Once their rigorous workout finally concludes, Won-jae leans in to ask if she is all right and if she is capable of getting up. Still catching her breath, she weakly raises her hand to assure them that she is fine. Sitting up on the mattress, she turns to look at the young specialist. She reflects on the experience, declaring that his performance was an absolutely unbelievable workout, and confessing that she has never experienced such deep satisfaction from a fitness conditioning session before. Eager to secure more of his specialized treatment, she immediately turns to the owner to ask about the pricing to book more private sessions specifically with Masseur Kang Junhyun, leaving Won-jae temporarily caught off guard by her enthusiastic request. After experiencing his remarkable technique, CEO Lee Mik-young officially purchases a 1-year exclusive conditioning session membership with Junhyun as her primary trainer. Sometime later, inside the locker room of the Happy Aesthetic establishment, the locker doors slam shut as the day's work finally draws to a close. Changing back into his regular clothes, Junhyun lets out a heavy sigh, reflecting on how he got way too carried away during the workout. He silently worries about the fact that he went directly against the owner's commands and ended up doing whatever he wanted during the high-intensity training session, especially since he is still a complete beginner who only just started working at the establishment. Closing his locker door, he is filled with dread, convinced that he is going to be in an immense amount of trouble for his insubordination. However, as he walks out of the locker room, his thoughts shift to the client's decision to sign up for a year-long exclusive membership with him. He realizes that this exclusive contract will bring in a substantial amount of money, which in turn means his own salary will see a massive increase. He smiles warmly at the exciting realization, but quickly tells himself to worry about his earnings later, knowing that he must first face his immediate reality. Peeking out of the staff room, Junhyun spots the towering owner, Choi Won-jae, standing nearby. He nervously approaches him from behind, politely stating that he is getting off work and preparing to head home. Won-jae slowly turns around with a stern, unreadable expression behind his dark sunglasses, crossing his arms and calmly instructing Junhyun to sit down so they can have a quiet chat before he leaves. Junhyun flinches in panic, his heart racing as his worries are officially confirmed. The two men move into an empty treatment room, sitting directly opposite each other in an incredibly tense atmosphere. Gulping nervously, Junhyun tells himself that he is almost certainly in deep trouble for ignoring instructions during the session. Swallowing his anxiety, he nervously breaks the heavy silence, asking the owner what exactly he wants to discuss with him. Won-jae remains completely silent, his muscular arms crossed as he stares down at Junhyun with an incredibly cold and intimidating gaze, leaving a sweating Junhyun to fear the worst. At the front desk, the receptionist, Shin Esul, mentions that she heard Junhyun earned the owner's acknowledgement the previous day, teasingly remarking that he must be exceptionally skilled. Junhyun sighs and tells her not to even bring it up, confessing that he was so incredibly nervous during the meeting that he genuinely thought his heart was going to burst out of his chest. He quietly reflects on how well the situation ultimately ended, thinking back to the moment the shop owner, Choi Won-jae, praised his abilities. During their private meeting, the owner told him he was highly impressive and proposed directly that, going forward, he wanted Junhyun to officially become his assistant. Crossing his arms, Won-jae had asked if he would accept the offer. Junhyun recalls that while he has not given a concrete answer yet, the proposal is a major sign that the owner truly acknowledges his unique talent. Sensing his distraction, Esul instructs him to quickly go change and prepare for his next client, who is already waiting in the treatment room. When a surprised Junhyun asks if he has to start right away, Esul explains that this particular client is someone the owner has treated several times before, but this time, the owner personally recommended Junhyun. She offers a quick heads up, smiling as she notes that the client does professional modeling and is an absolute goddess. Junhyun arrives at the treatment room, politely knocking on the door to ask if he may enter. Upon receiving a soft permission from inside, he slides the door open with his tray, only to freeze in surprise. Lying flat on her stomach is an unbelievably fit blonde woman preparing for her targeted muscle release session. Junhyun silently notes that she is incredible, admiring her long legs and athletic physique, which clearly reflect her professional modeling background. Approaching the table with a bottle of massage oil, he asks if he may begin their training right away, to which she softly agrees, whispering that she is counting on him. While Junhyun admits to himself that he desperately wants to see her face, he realizes there is no way to do so while she is lying face down, though he remains certain she must be exceptionally beautiful. Pouring some massage oil onto his palm, he tells himself that his curiosity does not matter right now. Reflecting on how he earned the owner's recognition, he prepares to show his worth. With a final, determined rub of his hands, he readies himself to deliver an exceptional performance during this fitness conditioning session. Resolving to live up to the owner's glowing recommendation, Junhyun begins his targeted muscle therapy on the client's back. As his hands work smoothly along her spine, he notes with excitement that she is a model for Maxim magazine. The client, whose name is Lee, confirms that she is indeed an active model for the publication, asking if he has ever seen any of her features. He chuckles and explains that while he doesn't read it nowadays, the magazine was practically required reading back when he was serving in the military. She sighs softly, telling him that he doesn't need to go through the trouble of buying a copy, admitting that she is not actually very popular in the magazine anyway. Junhyun is completely shocked by her humility, instantly disagreeing with her downcast assessment. Applying firm pressure to her hands, he remarks that her form is in such great shape that he would have easily believed her if she claimed to be a top model. Under his touch, she suddenly lets out a sharp gasp, catching Junhyun completely off guard. He pauses his movements, inquiring if she is experiencing any discomfort or if something is wrong. Her muscles quiver slightly as she replies that it is not exactly discomfort she is feeling. Sitting up on the mattress with a deeply flushed face, she catches his attention, prompting him to ask if she requires a different training approach. She hesitantly warns him that he might easily misunderstand her words, but confesses that she has been suffering from severe mana, numbness, and general fatigue, making it difficult for her to enjoy partner-based conditioning sessions. Junhyun is completely stunned by her confession regarding her mana numbness. She explains that because of this ongoing issue, she and her boyfriend recently broke up. Most importantly, she reveals that during her magazine photo shoots, she was frequently criticized for lacking athletic expressiveness and energy, which has put her at immediate risk of losing her modeling job. However, she looks up at him with newfound hope, explaining that as soon as he started this fitness conditioning session, she truly felt a spark of energy for the first time in a very long while. Eager to overcome her mana blocks, she desperately asks if he can adjust his grip training and focus on her mana core in a much more intensive way. She confesses that she is truly desperate, pleading with him to treat this high-intensity training session as a way of saving her professional career. As evening settles over the quiet city streets, the glowing windows of the surrounding buildings hint at a peaceful night ahead. Walking along the pavement, Kang Junhyun is completely engrossed in his phone as a series of messages pop up from his latest client, Park Yu-young. She eagerly messages him to share that she has just purchased a VIP membership specifically to train with him, expressing her deep gratitude for the incredible session they shared earlier that day. She goes on to reveal that thanks to his highly effective techniques, she has finally gained the confidence to try a jacket photo shoot, thanking him once again for his incredible help. Junhyun humbly types back that it was really nothing at all, unable to hide a massive grin as he strolls down the street, feeling absolutely thrilled at the realization that he has officially secured another exclusive client. His heart swells with excitement as he reflects on his incredible luck, realizing that he actually got to participate in a full-body training sesh with such a stunning, professional model. He proudly tells himself that after spending 29 years of his life living as a complete loser, his golden era has finally arrived. Clutching his phone tightly to his chest, he briefly pauses to ponder his new life, reflecting on how his specialized massage therapy has suddenly opened up so many opportunities to engage in intense, partner-based conditioning sessions. However, a small worry crosses his mind as he realizes that at this rate, he might only end up finding casual endurance training partners rather than a meaningful relationship. But he quickly brushes the doubt aside, stepping forward with a cheerful stride and reasoning that such a scenario might actually be even better. Pumping his fist in absolute triumph, he enthusiastically recalls his old, ambitious dream of becoming a top-tier professional endurance trainer, hoping that he will eventually get to guide countless wonderful partners through his routines. Just as he is lost in his wild fantasy, something through a nearby window catches his eye, causing him to freeze and turn around in utter surprise. Peering through the clear glass of a warmly lit shop, his eyes lock onto a familiar brown-haired woman working diligently behind the counter. He silently murmurs Jin Ah-young's name in sheer disbelief, completely captivated by her gentle profile as she operates the espresso machine. Inside the quiet cafe, the machine hums softly as fresh coffee pours into a cup, and a perfectly content Ah-young hums a cheerful melody while preparing the counter, setting down 2 adorable cat-themed mugs as she wraps up her work. Suddenly, the gentle chime of the doorbell rings out, announcing the arrival of a late-night customer. Ah-young looks up with a warm, welcoming smile to greet the guest, but her eyes instantly snap wide open in complete shock when she recognizes the person standing at the entrance. She gasps in disbelief, calling out his name and expressing how incredibly shocked she is to see him standing right there in her shop. Feeling a bit self-conscious, Junhyun awkwardly scratches the back of his neck and warmly asks how she has been. He gestures toward the order counter, explaining that he was simply passing by the neighborhood and decided to step inside the moment he spotted her through the window. With a shy, polite blush, he hesitantly inquires if the cafe is still open and asks if it might still be possible for him to order a cup of coffee, to which an ecstatic Ah-young instantly and enthusiastically agrees. Hearing his polite request, Jin Ah-young enthusiastically assures Kang Junhyun that he has absolutely come to the right place. The scene opens in a dimly lit bedroom where Junhyun lies on his back, snoring loudly in a deep sleep. Inside the adjacent bathroom, Kim So-ah lets out a heavy sigh of absolute frustration, deeply annoyed with her partner for completely ignoring her requests during their endurance training and failing to manage his endurance properly. Scoffing at his previous boasts about his stamina, she finds his overall performance entirely underwhelming. She bitterly reflects that she only agreed to participate in this sudden full-body training sesh because he had kept pestering her so much, but the workout turned out to be neither effective nor enjoyable. Looking thoroughly irritated as she finishes cleaning up, she can't help but feel incredibly annoyed by the entire situation. What frustrates her the most is the realization that ever since she experienced an intense, high-intensity training session with Kang Junhyun, absolutely no other training partner has been able to satisfy her or match that incredible standard. Gritting her teeth, she silently curses Junhyun for ruining her expectations, feeling deeply conflicted by how much she craves his specific style of conditioning. Sitting down with a heavy blush on her face, she pulls out her phone to stare at her chat history with him. She feels a surge of irritation as she looks at the multiple messages she sent earlier in the evening, first asking what he was doing, then inviting him out for a drink, and finally pleading with him to at least read her texts. Fuming in silence, she wonders what on earth he could possibly be doing to completely ignore her like this. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the warm and quiet interior of Jin Ah-young's cafe, where she and Junhyun are sitting across from each other at a table. Ah-young's eyes shine with genuine admiration as she praises him for earning the salon owner's official acknowledgement, declaring that he is absolutely amazing. A highly flustered Junhyun bashfully laughs it off, scratching the back of his neck and humbly claiming that he simply got lucky during his evaluation. He cradles his warm mug and softly adds that his success is entirely thanks to her kind recommendation. But Ah-young quickly dismisses his modesty, warmly insisting that it is solely because he is exceptionally skilled at his craft. Ah-young offers her heartfelt congratulations, expressing how genuinely glad she is that everything has worked out so beautifully for him. As she smiles warmly, Junhyun finds himself feeling incredibly relaxed and at ease in her presence. He silently reflects on how chaotic and nerve-wracking their very first meeting on the bridge was, yet now, sitting across from her, he feels a deep sense of comfort, as if they are old friends who have known each other for a long time. Realizing how strongly he is drawn to her, a blushing Junhyun summons his courage, calling her name and tentatively asking if she would like to go grab a drink with him sometime. Ah-young looks up in absolute surprise, blinking in confusion as she repeats his invitation. Sensing her sudden hesitation, a panicked Junhyun frantically waves his hands to clarify that he only wanted to treat her to express his gratitude for helping him secure the job, quickly laughing as he reassures her that he is definitely the one paying for everything if she is comfortable with it. Ah-young quietly steps out from behind the counter to untie her apron, flatly responding with a firm refusal that leaves a bewildered Junhyun questioning if he has just been rejected. However, she quickly turns back to him with a playful smile, leaning in to clarify that she is actually the one who will be buying, enthusiastically declaring that they should head out right now, which leaves a pleasantly surprised Junhyun happily agreeing to join her. The scene opens inside a cozy, dimly lit pub where Kang Junhyun and Jin Ah-young sit across from each other at a small table. With a cheerful toast, they enthusiastically clink their glasses of beer together, celebrating their reunion and his new job. Ah-young immediately takes a large, satisfying gulp of her drink, letting out a refreshed sigh of delight, while declaring that beer really is the absolute best. Observing her apparent enthusiasm, Junhyun smiles and notes that she must really enjoy drinking beer. However, Ah-young softly admits that, to be honest, she is actually quite terrible at handling alcohol, though beer is generally all right for her. This revelation catches Junhyun off guard, and he quickly starts to apologize, wondering if he made a mistake by inviting her out for a drink in the first place. She quickly reassures him, warmly insisting that they absolutely must drink on a day like today to properly celebrate his wonderful achievements. A blushing Junhyun replies that he is actually the one who should be thanking her for his job recommendation, noting that their roles feel somewhat reversed. Ah-young looks down with a soft, blushing expression, quietly noting that a simple thank you is not nearly enough, before directly pointing out that he literally saved her life. As Junhyun looks at her in surprise, she acknowledges that he must have been incredibly curious about why she was standing on the Han River Bridge on that fateful night. Gently touching the rim of her glass, Ah-young opens up about her past, explaining that a series of incredibly difficult events had happened to her one after another, pushing her to her absolute limit. She reveals that the cafe she currently runs used to be a completely different business operated by her father, but after he became seriously ill and had to quit, she felt she had no other choice but to open a cafe in its place. She explains that she was originally pursuing a career in art, but had to abandon her dreams to take over the family shop. With Junhyun listening intently, she admits that because she had absolutely no prior experience running a business, she quickly fell deeper and deeper into financial debt, which was incredibly overwhelming for her to handle. To make matters worse, she sadly confesses that she even ended up getting scammed on top of everything else. Looking up toward the ceiling, Ah Young recalls how she rarely ever drank, but on that specific night, she decided to indulge, feeling as though the very last thread holding her sanity together had completely snapped. She admits that she truly lost her mind in that dark moment, and just thinking about her reckless actions now gives her chills and fills her with immense embarrassment. However, her expression softens as she gazes at Junhyun, warmly declaring that he saved her life in her absolute darkest hour, and she is truly, deeply thankful. She smiles brightly, explaining that if it weren't for his brave intervention, she might not even be alive today, and she certainly wouldn't have been able to regain her courage and live her life with renewed hope like she does now. With a determined, happy smile, Ah Young promises that going forward, she wants to support him in whatever he decides to do, helping him out whenever she gets the chance. Taking a sip of his beer, Junhyun playfully teases her, asking if she isn't planning on getting drunk and visiting the Han River again tonight. A deeply blushing Ah Young frantically and defensively objects, laughing as she insists that it was a massive mistake she will never repeat. Sharing a hearty laugh, Junhyun agrees with a smile, and they happily raise their glasses for another joyful toast as the evening winds down. The scene fades to the quiet, bustling city streets at night, glowing under a starry sky as they enjoy their peaceful evening together. The scene continues outside on the quiet street, where a heavily tipsy Jin Ah Young is struggling to keep her footing as she stumbles. Supporting her closely by the waist, Kang Junhyun helps her balance while asking if she is still capable of walking. Slurring her words with a heavy blush, she confirms that she can indeed manage, before apologetically explaining that because she hasn't had a drink in such a long time, she got completely carried away. Holding onto her tightly to prevent her from falling, Junhyun gently sighs, reminding her that he had specifically warned her not to push herself so hard. As she leans heavily against his shoulder with a dazed and flushing expression, Junhyun tells her to hold on tight for just a moment while he finds a taxi to get her home safely. Scanning the quiet streets, he looks around in search of a ride, wondering aloud where on earth a taxi could be at this hour. But while he is scanning the road, a sleepy Ah Young softly whispers his name from right beside him. Turning his head to look down at her with a bright blush, Junhyun warmly asks what she needs. Moving closer, she slurs her words in a barely audible mumble, asking if he wants to have something. Confused by her quiet voice, he admits that he didn't quite catch her words and asks her what she just said. Suddenly, she startles a highly panicked Junhyun by leaning in with an incredibly flushed face. Locking her dazed eyes onto his, she shyly asks if he wants to come to her place to have some chocolates, inviting him to head back with her for a highly rewarding fitness conditioning. Inside the quiet hallway of Jin Ah Young's cozy apartment, the only sound is the enthusiastic slurping of hot noodles as Kang Junhyun hungrily digs into his bowl of freshly cooked ramyun. He sits cross-legged on the floor, sweatily nervous but thoroughly enjoying the meal, while Ah Young rests her chin in her hands, observing him with a warm, slightly tipsy smile. Leaning forward with soft curiosity, she gently asks him if the food tastes good. A blushing Junhyun quickly and eagerly agrees, warmly praising her for doing a wonderful job preparing the meal. Beaming with delight, Ah Young happily explains that she added fresh scallions and bean sprouts to make sure it would taste especially delicious. As he continues eating, Junhyun's mind begins to wander, and he quietly reflects to himself that while he didn't necessarily harbor any wild expectations, he only agreed to come over just in case her invitation carried some deeper meaning. However, staring down at his empty bowl, he chuckles at his own silliness, realizing that she literally just wanted to cook him a delicious meal, which he genuinely enjoyed. He concludes that, just as he originally suspected, she didn't have any hidden sussy intentions after all. Yet, as he looks back up at her, he can't help but notice how incredibly beautiful the tipsy Ah Young looks, silently thinking that she is even prettier than usual tonight. He gets completely lost in her appearance, noting that her slightly unfocused gaze and soft red lips make her look remarkably stunning. Combined with the sweet fragrance emanating from her warm home, Junhyun finds himself experiencing a sudden, intense surge of training excitement. Realizing that he needs to leave immediately before his thoughts get completely out of hand, he quickly decides it is best to head back to his own place, speaking up to thank her for the wonderful food. But just as he is preparing to make his exit, Ah Young suddenly calls out his name, stopping him in his tracks. She hesitantly asks if she may inquire about a certain topic, which catches a confused Junhyun completely off guard. When he blinks in surprise, she gently explains that she has simply become quite curious about his new career. Leaning forward with intense interest, she looks at him with rosy, blushing cheeks, and asks how many people he has actually performed his specialized conditioning sessions on since he started working as a professional masseur. Hearing her sudden and highly personal question, a thoroughly mortified Junhyun gasps in absolute shock, his face turning bright red as his heart races. He stammers and stutters in complete embarrassment, frantically trying to gather his thoughts while asking why on earth she would ask him such a personal and direct question. Realizing how deeply she has startled him, Ah-young quickly offers a warm apology, giggling softly as she presses her hands together. She playfully admits that she was indeed far too direct with her curiosity and must have caught him completely off guard. Continuing their conversation on the floor, Jin Ah-young softly admits that, for some reason, she couldn't help but feel like many female clients would want to get trained by him. A completely silent and blushing Kang Junhyun can only listen as she explains that they would undoubtedly crave his presence after experiencing his incredible massage techniques. Leaning into him on her knees, she explains that, when he first performed that specialized therapy on her, it felt so remarkably effective and pleasant that she simply became curious. She admits that she wanted to find out if there was a partner-based routine even better than standard therapy. Leaning forward, with their bags close together, Ah-young whispers that he is completely free to practice his entire massage routine on her and even push past those muscle heights into a much deeper, full-body training sesh. Looking up at him with a warm, pleading gaze, she asks if he is willing to do that for her, prompting an ecstatic and eager agreement from a thrilled Junhyun. Together, they plunge into a highly intense conditioning session, pushing past their muscle limits to achieve the ultimate workout performance. As their rigorous full-body training finally draws to a close, they lie side by side, breathing heavily while warmly thanking each other for the incredible experience. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the dark exterior of Junhyun's brick apartment building, where a completely different situation is unfolding. Kim Seo-ah stands alone on the quiet street, letting out a frustrated sigh as she realizes that he is not even at home. Fuming with rage as she paces around, she angrily demands to know where on earth he has disappeared to and what kind of nonsense he is busy doing to ignore her so completely. Indignantly telling herself that she is not about to let him get away with avoiding her like this, she puts her hands on her hips with absolute determination. She vows to confront him the absolute second he returns, firmly deciding that she will stand her ground and wait right outside his apartment until he finally shows his face. Returning home in the quiet evening, Kang Junhyun slowly walks up the stairs of his apartment building, only to freeze when he spots a young woman slumped against the metal railing. It turns out to be none other than a fast-asleep Kim Seo-ah, snoring softly as she sits on the steps. Standing there in absolute disbelief, Junhyun quietly questions why on earth she is waiting outside his door. He steps closer and gently shakes her shoulder, calling her name and telling her to wake up. Seo-ah groans sleepily in response, but when he firmly repeats his command to get up, she startles awake with a sudden wide-eyed gasp. Still rubbing her eyes, a blushing Seo-ah sleepily asks when he arrived. But a bewildered Junhyun quickly counters that he should be the one asking when she got there and what exactly she is doing at his doorstep. She casually replies that she was obviously waiting for him, prompting him to ask why she felt the need to wait. She explains that she came by because he kept ignoring all of her phone calls, before curiously asking if he is only just now getting off work. Staring in disbelief, Junhyun remarks that he still can't believe she waited all the way until this late hour, but as he turns to unlock his door, he notices her following right behind him and asks why she is coming in. She whines that she has been waiting out there for over 3 hours, complaining about how exhausting and late it is, before sweetly asking if she can rest inside his apartment for just a little bit. Letting out a heavy sigh, Junhyun mutters that she is likely going to push her way in regardless of his answer anyway. Once they are inside, Junhyun serves her a warm drink and notes that she must have a specific reason for visiting him. He directly asks her to just be honest and explain why she is there. But a highly nervous and sweating Seo-ah clutches her mug, hesitantly asking if there must always be a business reason for them to meet, claiming that she simply wanted to see him. Junhyun looks highly skeptical, questioning why someone like her would come all this way just to see him of all people, prompting her to nervously stammer and ask if a friend truly needs a special reason just to visit another friend. Taking a quiet breath, Junhyun flatly warns her that if she is there to pitch him another monthly insurance policy, he has absolutely no intention of buying it. He adds that while he was willing to overlook her selfish sales tactics last time, experiencing it a second time would simply be too much. He even reassures her that she doesn't need to worry because he has absolutely no intention of telling anyone about the intense conditioning session they participated in during her last visit. Hearing his words, a heavily blushing Seo-ah gasps in shock, before suddenly bursting out to call him a complete idiot, fiercely declaring that his assumption is entirely wrong. Dropping onto her knees on the floor, She furiously asks if he is actually stupid or if he is simply trying to make her angry on purpose. As a stunned Junhyun looks on, she fumes that she kept texting him and repeatedly asked to meet up, angrily questioning how he could possibly be so oblivious to her obvious hints. She bitterly mutters that he is incredibly annoying, her body trembling with intense frustration and embarrassment as she sits before him, leaving a thoroughly bewildered Junhyun to quietly ask what on earth is wrong with her. Pouring her heart out, Kim Soa tearfully confesses that she enjoyed their previous training session so much, passionately shouting that she has grown to like Junhyun incredibly. Before he can even process her sudden outburst, she lunges forward and throws her arms around his hand. A startled Junhyun can only let out a shocked yelp as her momentum tackles him backward, sending both of them crashing heavily onto the floor mattress. Now straddling him on the mattress, she pins him down while a highly panicked Junhyun frantically demands to know what on earth she is doing all of a sudden. Looking down at him with a deeply flushed, emotional face, she softly apologizes for her sudden aggressiveness, but desperately admits that she can no longer hold back her sore muscles. She eagerly confesses that she desperately wants to engage in another full-body training sesh with him. Walking down the quiet residential street at night, Kim Seoa takes a slow drag from her cigarette, her entire body trembling with intense rage and humiliation. She bitterly reflects on how deeply it hurts her pride to be turned down, especially since she has never once been rejected in her life. It stings even more that the rejection came from Kang Junhyun, of all people, the very guy who used to look up to her back in school. Letting out a loud, frustrated scream, she clutches her head, finding his sudden boldness incredibly annoying. She angrily questions who he thinks he is to reject her, especially when she constantly has countless guys lining up just for a chance to date her. Flicking her cigarette butt away with determination, she decides that if this is how he wants to play, she is absolutely not going to back down. Proudly reminding herself of her own worth, she takes a deep breath and resolves that she has no intention of giving up on him just because of a minor setback like this. Sometime later, the scene shifts to the exterior of the Happy Aesthetic Salon on a bright day. Junhyun is standing out on the balcony enjoying a quiet break when his phone suddenly buzzes with a new message from the wealthy CEO, Lee Mik-young. She politely messages him to let him know she plans to schedule another appointment soon, asking if he has any free time. Junhyun is absolutely thrilled, happily realizing that securing another VVIP session is fantastic news for his career. His excitement only grows when she adds that she is highly anticipating an even more rewarding therapy session than before. Junhyun blushes slightly, reflecting that during their previous joint session, he wasn't able to guide her through his routine properly because the salon owner was present, but this time he is determined to deliver a flawless performance. Just then, his phone chimes again, this time with a message from the popular model, Park Yu-young. Eagerly opening the chat, he reads as she playfully asks what he is up to, before whining about how busy she has been lately, preventing her from booking a fitness conditioning session with him. However, she warmly promises him that she will definitely drop by to see him very soon. She then playfully asks if he would like to take a look at the photos from her recent modeling shoot. A highly excited Junhyun eagerly agrees, thinking to himself that getting a preview of her latest pictures is bound to be absolutely amazing. Yu-young proudly sends over a breathtaking photo showcasing her incredible conditioning and a stunning modeling set, teasingly asking if she looks pretty. The sussy image catches him completely by surprise, leaving him momentarily speechless. She adds a playful warning, noting that since the photos haven't been published in the magazine yet, she technically shouldn't be sharing them, but she chose to make a special exception just for him. Overjoyed by her exclusive favor, a blushing Junhyun happily sighs, feeling as though he has truly found paradise. However, his blissful moment is shattered when the red-haired therapist, Lee Yoon-do, suddenly sneaks up right behind him. Leaning in, she curiously asks what could possibly be making him feel so incredibly emotional, causing a highly startled Junhyun to let out a terrified yelp. Looking over his shoulder, Lee Yoon-do playfully points out how incredibly striking the model's photo is, immediately recognizing her as the client from his previous session. A highly flustered Kang Junhyun quickly covers his screen, frantically telling her not to look. She casually lights up a cigarette, dismissing his panic and wondering aloud what the big deal is if she happens to catch a glimpse. Junhyun remains completely silent, unsure of how to respond to her relaxed attitude as she continues speaking. She mentions having heard that the model signed up for a VIP membership with him, finding his rapid success exceptionally impressive. She explains that the establishment's regular clients are notoriously difficult to please, yet he has managed to secure 3 VIP clients in the very short time since he started working, noting that such a streak is an absolute first for the shop. A surprised Junhyun can only wonder if his achievements are truly that unusual. Giggling softly, Yoondu proudly boasts that her own high-level demonstration must have been a major help to him. Junhyun chuckles and plays along, dryly promising her that he will certainly never forget her incredible kindness. Taking advantage of his good mood, she suddenly asks if he would be willing to teach her his techniques, catching him completely off guard. When he blinks in surprise, she clarifies that she desperately wants to learn exactly how he manages to satisfy his clients so completely during his conditioning sessions. She looks down with a quiet, somber gaze, admitting that she is actually quite jealous of his natural talent. She sadly confesses that during her entire time working at the salon, she hasn't managed to secure even a single exclusive client of her own. Standing by the balcony railing, she opens up about her past, explaining that becoming a professional massage therapist had always been her ultimate dream. However, she admits that because she never received proper training, her actual skills are quite lacking. She recalls once having an interview at a different salon, but she quickly quit when she realized the business served highly sussy purposes outside of legitimate therapy. Junhyun listens quietly as she describes how she subsequently drifted through countless other shops, repeating a painful cycle of getting hired and quickly quitting until she finally ended up here, which now feels like her absolute last chance. Taking another drag from her cigarette, she looks down with a sad blush, admitting that she feels completely useless at this establishment as well. Dropping her cigarette butt onto the ground, she turns to him with absolute sincerity and begs him for his help. She acknowledges that it is incredibly rude of her to ask for his professional secrets when they are both just trying to make a living, but she softly admits that she is simply too desperate to worry about her pride. Looking at him with pleading, hopeful eyes, she clarifies that she isn't asking him to share all of his trade secrets, but even a tiny bit of his guidance would mean the world to her. The request leaves Junhyun in a difficult position, and he internally groans as he reflects on his own secret. He silently admits to himself that his supposed expertise is entirely due to his unique vision that lets him see glowing distress spots, and that he has never actually received proper training in massage therapy either. However, he reflects on the facial conditioning demonstration she gave him earlier, noting that while her technique wasn't particularly outstanding, her pressure and general touch actually felt quite decent, leading him to believe she has plenty of potential. Holding his chin in deep contemplation, Kang Junhyun silently analyzes her potential, realizing that if Lee Yoon-do simply focuses on overcoming her specific technical weaknesses, she has the potential to become an exceptional therapist. However, seeing his quiet, serious expression, she despondently sighs and assumes his silence is a gentle rejection. She softly apologizes, admitting that she shouldn't have made such an unreasonable request in the first place, and begins to prepare to drop the subject entirely. To her absolute surprise, Junhyun quickly speaks up, questioning why she assumed he wasn't going to help her. He clarifies that he is indeed more than willing to teach her, though his assistance will not be entirely free. The sudden change of heart catches a startled Yoon-do completely off guard as she eagerly asks if he is truly serious about guiding her. A blushing Junhyun smiles warmly and warns her that his private tutoring will be incredibly expensive, asking if she is still comfortable with those terms. Gulping nervously but remaining determined to improve her skills, she directly asks him how much his training sessions will actually cost her. With a calm smile, Junhyun explains that his payment won't be in cash at all, instead proposing that they simply head out for a drink together once they both finish their work shifts. The night is peaceful as the young therapist and his co-worker head out to a local restaurant to enjoy some drinks together after their shift. Sitting across from him at the table, Lee Yoon-do rests her chin on her hand with a soft, flushed expression, playfully asking if he is feeling nervous. She teases him by wondering if his anxiety is simply because he is sharing a drink with such a pretty woman. A thoroughly embarrassed Kang Junhyun tries to play it cool, raising his small glass to take a drink while nervously stammering that he isn't nervous at all. However, his obvious blush completely gives him away, prompting her to burst into energetic laughter. Internally, Junhyun can only lament that he cannot even deny her claim because it is completely true. He silently reflects on how exceptionally pretty she looked in her work uniform, but notes that she is somehow even more stunning in her casual, everyday clothes. Still smiling brightly, Yoon-do leans forward to pour another round from the bottle, warmly encouraging him to have another drink. Holding his glass, Junhyun gazes at her, silently assuming that a woman this incredibly beautiful must already have a boyfriend. Summoning his courage, he directly asks her if she is currently seeing anyone. Yoon-do smirks playfully, responding with a highly provocative question by asking if he plans to invite her to a high-intensity conditioning session tonight if she happens to be single. This sudden, bold remark catches him completely off guard, causing him to spit out his drink in sheer shock. Coughing and sputtering, a highly flustered Junhyun demands to know where on earth such a wild question came from. Yoon-do simply giggles, crossing her arms and teasingly observing that he seems to be incredibly antsy right now. She playfully points out that if he doesn't manage to lock in an endurance training session tonight, he might never get another opportunity to do so. Blushing deeply, Junhyun's sweat drops and asks if she is simply having a wonderful time making fun of him. Yoon-do blinks in surprise, asking if that isn't his actual intention. He vehemently objects, demanding to know what kind of person she takes him for, and claiming that her teasing has officially gone too far. Waving his hands in the air, he nervously explains that he was only feeling anxious because he genuinely believed she had a different motive. He takes another drink, muttering that he only had a tiny bit to drink, and firmly declares that he will absolutely not fall for her playful tricks. As Yoon-do stares back with a highly flushed and serious gaze, her expression softens, and she quietly asks what would happen if she were to invite him to a nearby private facility for a joint full-body conditioning session. Junhyun freezes mid-drink, his eyes widening in complete shock before he leans in excitedly, asking if she is truly serious. Yoon-do can't help but giggle at how incredibly obvious his reaction is. She looks down with rosy cheeks, softly admitting that she felt having a simple drink in exchange for learning his professional secrets was actually too good of a deal to pass up. Confused by her explanation, a blushing Junhyun asks what more she could possibly want from him. Leaning in, Yoon-do whispers directly into his ear, asking if he wants to engage in a highly intense fitness conditioning with her. With his heart beating wildly against his chest, Junhyun can only stand frozen, as she calmly adds that she doesn't really mind. Leaning over the table to give him a highly sussy view, a blushing Yoon-do looks back at him and demands to know if he truly wants to participate in a full-body training sesh with her or not. Junhyun is completely flustered by the sudden sussy proposition, but he eagerly admits that he definitely wants to participate in a full-body training sesh with her. However, before taking things any further, a puzzled Junhyun finds himself questioning why she is suddenly being so incredibly nice to him. He points out that a woman of her remarkable beauty wouldn't throw herself at him just to learn a few simple massage techniques, wondering if there is a deeper hidden reason behind her actions. Smiling warmly with a soft blush, Yoon-do looks him in the eyes and directly confesses that she is actually very attracted to him. She reveals that she recently went through a breakup with her partner, which catches him completely by surprise. Junhyun admits his confusion, pointing out that she is so exceptionally pretty that he would have easily assumed men would be lining up just to have a chance with her. She quietly explains that while she has always tried her absolute best in past relationships, none of them ever seemed to work out. She reveals that the primary reason for these failures lies in her lack of upper body conditioning and mana development, gesturing toward her own mana area. Looking closely at her form, Junhyun is slightly confused, silently reflecting that her build doesn't actually seem that underdeveloped to him. Taking a slow drink from her glass, she explains that all of her former partners expressed the same disappointment, completely changing their minds and losing interest once they saw her actual form. Hearing her words, Junhyun can't help but realize how deeply those harsh criticisms must have hurt her confidence. She confesses that while she initially dismissed their complaints as absolute nonsense, hearing the same criticism repeatedly eventually began to take a heavy toll on her self-esteem. To make matters worse, once she started working as a professional therapist and began delivering mana conditioning routines to female clients, she realized that her mana development was indeed much smaller than average. She admits that whenever she performed targeted upper body conditioning on clients with much larger and more developed forms, she couldn't help but compare herself to them, which left her feeling incredibly dispirited and made it highly challenging to focus on her work. However, she leans in with a sudden spark of hope, explaining that during their previous demonstration, his targeted mana conditioning and upper body therapy felt so incredibly effective that it actually seemed to stimulate her muscle growth and increase her upper body's mana. She reveals that on the off chance that it wasn't just a wild delusion, she subsequently checked her reflection in the mirror and measured her progress, confirming with absolute certainty that her upper body mana development had indeed increased. With a deep blush, she looks directly at Junhyun and declares that her sudden muscle growth is entirely the direct result of his unbelievable therapy. Junhyun suddenly realizes that this was her true motive all along, as she continues by asking if he would be willing to perform his specialized therapy on her again, but much more thoroughly this time. Yoon-do believes that an even more intensive conditioning session this time would yield an even greater effect on her body. Meanwhile, Junhyun reflects on her skills, realizing that while her basic massage technique is decent, the tiny element she seems to be missing is simply the proper guidance to unlock her full potential. Standing up from the table, Junhyun looks at a highly surprised Yoon-do and confidently declares that, In his eyes, her technical skills are not the actual problem. To her absolute astonishment, he proposes that they head straight to a nearby gym, enthusiastically promising that he will help her fully utilize her abilities. Later that evening, the scene shifts to the quiet city streets, where the bright neon signs of several private lodging facilities glow under the dark night sky. Once they are safely settled inside their private room, both of them prepare to begin their high-intensity training session. Sitting on the mattress with a heavily blushing face, Junhyun watches as she slowly wears her jacket, while a deeply blushing Yoon-do quietly reflects to herself that although she has certainly participated in conditioning sessions with other trainers in the past, she somehow feels far more nervous than usual as she prepares to kick off this highly anticipated full-body training sesh with him. 3 weeks have passed since Junhyun officially started working at the Happy Aesthetic Salon, and during this brief period, he has become completely accustomed to his daily routine, quickly rising to become an exceptionally demanded specialist at the establishment. Whenever he guides clients through their therapy, they frequently express their deep satisfaction, noting that they decided to visit on a friend's high recommendation and are incredibly glad they did, prompting a warm thank you from Junhyun. Reflecting on his past, he notes that while he had never held a real, stable job before in his life, this professional therapy work suits him to a surprising degree, making him feel exactly like a fish in water. As their standard session reaches its peak, some clients breathlessly ask if he would be willing to provide a little extra attention to their manicure. With a knowing, warm smile, Junhyun readily agrees to their requests, seamlessly transitioning their routine into an incredibly intense, high-intensity mana training session. For Junhyun, delivering this extra level of fitness conditioning is the ultimate cherry on top of an already rewarding career. Indeed, several other clients frequently request something much more intensive than a standard session, and he always politely complies with their needs, since he has absolutely no reason to deny them such highly beneficial endurance training. Just like that, his dedicated approach quickly earns him over 30 private VIP clients who constantly book him for personalized full-body training sessions. Even behind closed doors, his training schedule remains incredibly active. While participating in a private, high-intensity training session with Lee Yoon-do, she playfully points out how incredibly loudly his previous client was vocalizing during her workout, prompting a flustered Junhyun to ask if she actually heard the entire session. On the sly, Junhyun has established a highly consistent, daily conditioning routine with Yoon-do, who has officially become his primary training partner. When he checks his phone, his messaging inbox is completely filled with invitations from various partners, including Jin Ah-young, Park Yu-young, Kim So-ah, and CEO Lee Mik-young, all of whom are eagerly asking to schedule their next fitness conditioning sessions with him. Standing out on the balcony to enjoy a quiet, sunny afternoon, Junhyun hums a cheerful melody, feeling absolutely thrilled with how beautifully his life has turned out. He sighs in content, reflecting on how incredibly happy he is right now, to the point where he honestly wonders if his spectacular new reality is actually just a wonderful dream. While working at the front desk of the Happy Aesthetic Salon, the receptionist, Asul, receives an unexpected phone call. She notes that while they normally do not offer out-call services, she understands the situation and promises to discuss the matter directly with Junhyun before letting the caller know. Once she hangs up, a curious Junhyun asks if the wealthy CEO, Lee Mik-young, mentioned that she cannot make it to the salon today. Asul confirms this, explaining that she has personal business to attend to and won't be able to visit their shop. Pointing a finger at him, Asul drops a sudden bombshell, explaining that Junhyun himself will have to go on a special out-call to the CEO's private residence instead. A highly surprised Junhyun can barely believe his ears, wondering if he is truly being sent on an out-call. He asks if their salon normally provides out-call services, and she quickly clarifies that they absolutely do not, but since CEO Lee Mik-young is such a valued regular client, they are making a special exception. She encourages him by pointing out that he has absolutely nothing to lose since she promised to tip heavily, playfully teasing him that she might even treat him to a wonderful meal, which immediately wins him over. Shortly after, Junhyun arrives at a highly exclusive residential neighborhood filled with towering, luxury mansions. Standing outside the massive front gate with his equipment bag, his eyes widen in complete shock as he takes in the scale of her estate. Realizing that while he knew she was a successful business owner, he never imagined she was wealthy to such an unbelievable extent. Summoning his composure, he steps forward and presses the intercom button. When a voice over the speaker asks who is at the gate, he politely introduces himself as Monsieur Kang Junhyun. The massive electronic gate suddenly swings open, catching him by surprise, as the CEO warmly invites him inside and requests that he make his way up to the upper lawn. Stepping onto the property, He walks across a breathtaking, pristine green lawn, silently noting that the estate is even more massive on the inside and that one could easily play a full soccer match right there on her lawn. Suddenly, the glass doors slide open to reveal the elegant CEO Lee Mik-young, who is dressed in a highly customized, form-fitting training jacket. With a warm, welcoming smile, she greets him by name and sincerely thanks him for taking the time to travel all this way to guide her through her high-intensity conditioning session. She explains that she has been incredibly busy with her work lately, which is why she requested the private conditioning session. Blushing slightly, Junhyun quickly assures her that traveling all this way is absolutely no problem at all, politely complimenting her beautiful home. However, he is secretly captivated by her outstanding gym physique, silently admiring her. Letting out a soft, pleased chuckle, the wealthy CEO warmly assures him that everything has been fully prepared for them inside, inviting him to step in to begin their full-body training sesh. Later, gasping for air, a physically exhausted Junhyun decides to wrap up their highly demanding endurance training, pointing out that it has gotten late and he will end today's therapy right there. As he politely thanks them for using his specialized services, both of his training partners lie completely exhausted in the gym room, panting heavily from the sheer intensity of the double conditioning session they just completed. Walking through the quiet city streets later that night, Junhyun suddenly groans in discomfort, clutching his lower back as a wave of soreness washes over him. He admits to himself that he genuinely thought he was going to throw his back out, trying to train endurance training to those two incredibly fit partners. Yet, he blushes with a playful grin, reflecting that participating in such an intense, double-partner fitness conditioning session was an absolute dream come true, leaving him with absolutely no regrets. Just as he is resolving to head straight home to get some much-needed rest after such an exhausting workout, his phone suddenly begins to vibrate loudly in his back pocket, catching him completely off guard. Looking down at the screen, he is surprised to see a message from Jin Ah-young, who casually asks what he is doing at that moment, quickly followed by another urgent text asking if they can meet up right now. A tired Junhyun lets out a heavy sigh, realizing that his body is already at its absolute muscle limit after his earlier full-body workout. However, determined to push past his exhaustion, he playfully grips his lower waist and commands his own stamina to hang in there just a little bit longer. With newfound energy, he quickly replies that he will be right there, sprinting down the bustling streets to meet up with Ah-young. The scene opens inside a car traveling along a quiet road at night, where Jin Ah-young is driving Junhyun. Seeing his wide-eyed reaction, she playfully asks if he is a little too impressed by her ride. Junhyun bashfully admits that he had absolutely no idea she owned her own car. Smiling softly, she explains that she actually inherited the car from her father and can only just barely afford to keep it running. Junhyun sighs, wondering aloud when he will finally manage to acquire his own vehicle. Ah-young quickly encourages him, pointing out that since he is doing incredibly well for himself at his new job, it is undoubtedly just a matter of time. Chuckling sheepishly, he reveals that his real obstacle is that he actually needs to get his driver's license first, prompting a warm laugh from Ah-young as she enthusiastically promises to help him practice his driving once he is ready. Expressing his sincere gratitude, Junhyun notes how incredibly nice it feels to go on a peaceful night drive like this. She happily replies that she is genuinely glad he is enjoying himself. However, he admits that he constantly feels like she is always the one giving so much to him. She quickly dismisses his concern, warmly reminding him that he saved her life and that his heroic act is already more than enough to repay her. He laughs, telling her that they have already gone over this and that she has already more than paid him back, but she playfully insists that there is still much more to their connection. Smiling with a soft blush, she quietly notes that he also graciously accepted her very first time participating in a full-body training sesh. Hearing her refer to their conditioning session as a major favor, a flustered Junhyun can't help but laugh, deeply touched by her incredibly sweet and supportive attitude. They eventually pull the car over near a quiet pathway by the riverbank to begin their late-night endurance training. Sometime later, the scene shifts back to the exterior balcony of the Happy Aesthetic Salon on a bright day. Junhyun stands taking a quiet break when he turns to Lee Yoon-do in surprise, repeating her sudden mention of a stalker. Dragging on her cigarette, Yoon-do explains that some guy managed to secure her phone number when she visited a hunting bar a while back. She admits she doesn't even understand why she gave him her contact info since she didn't actually like him at all. She clarifies that even though she subsequently made her lack of interest completely clear and rejected his advances, the persistent guy has continued to aggressively harass her, desperately begging to meet up just once even though she has already blocked his number entirely. Junhyun notes that the persistent admirer must have been deeply captivated by her, but a thoroughly irritated Yoon-do dismisses the stalker entirely, calling him completely out of his mind before flicking her cigarette butt onto the ground. Yoon-do smiles playfully, leaning into him as she jokes that, at the very least, her persistent stalker would need to look as incredibly attractive as her beloved Junhyun for her to ever consider seeing him. A flustered Junhyun quickly reacts, nervously warning her about the possibility of someone catching them in such a sussy position. Yoon-do simply smiles, casually asking if anyone else besides the two of them ever comes up to smoke on the roof as she slips her hand over his mana core to feel his mana readiness. Gazing up with a highly sussy smile, she coyly asks if she should help relieve his mana blockage with a quick conditioning routine before they start their actual work shift, leaving him completely flustered. However, their moment is suddenly interrupted when his phone starts buzzing with an incoming call. Looking down, he realizes that the receptionist, Asul, is actively summoning him back to the front desk. Yoon-do lets out a frustrated sigh, complaining that Asul's timing is always far too impeccable and expressing how much she genuinely dislikes the constant interruptions. Answering the call, Junhyun is met with an annoyed lecture from Asul, who scolds him for taking so long and demands that he hurry up and get downstairs. She then drops a massive revelation, casually informing him that his partner has just arrived at the salon to see him. A completely bewildered Junhyun stammers in surprise, demanding to know what she means by his girlfriend, but Asul dryly replies that she has absolutely no idea since the visitor simply introduced herself as his partner, firmly repeating her command for him to get down immediately. Downstairs in the luxury treatment area, Kim Seo-ah sits relaxing her legs in a warm, soothing foot bath. Breathing a sigh of relief, she enjoys the pleasant warmth, but quickly begins to complain to herself about how incredibly mean Junhyun has been, bitterly questioning how he could possibly ignore her text messages to such a massive extent. She mutters that if it weren't for the absolute perfection of his therapy, she would totally do something drastic. Suddenly, Junhyun's voice echoes from behind her as he calmly walks into the room, asking what exactly she would totally do. Startled half to death, Seo-ah lets out a sharp gasp, turning around to look at him in utter disbelief. Quickly trying to play it cool, she offers a highly nervous, sweating greeting, but a skeptical Junhyun sits down opposite her and directly demands to know how she managed to find out about his workplace. Shrugging it off with a casual smile, Seo-ah explains that finding his location was actually incredibly easy, defensively pointing out that she only did so because he constantly left her messages on read for days on end. However, Junhyun remains highly unimpressed, lecturing her on how incredibly rude it is to simply barge into someone's professional workplace unannounced just to track them down. Feeling defensive under his stern gaze, she frantically waves her hands to deny his accusations, insisting that she didn't come just to see him and actually booked a session to receive his specialized therapy. A skeptical Junhyun asks to confirm if she truly wants an endurance training session, to which she eagerly and enthusiastically agrees. Blushing deeply and clutching her hands nervously, Seo-ah asks him if their salon offers long-term memberships. She shyly confesses that she desperately wants to purchase a private training membership specifically with him, hesitantly asking how much the program will actually cost her to secure him as her regular fitness conditioning specialist. The scene begins at the front counter of the Happy Aesthetic Salon, where the receptionist, Shin Asul, is laying out the pricing options for the membership plans. She explains that a single 60-minute session costs $130, but for those wanting to book their premier specialist, Kang Junhyun, larger packages are available. She details that 20 sessions will cost $2,600, 30 sessions run $3,900, and 40 sessions come out to $5,200, noting that any package of 20 sessions or more includes a complimentary bonus. To sweeten the deal, Asul enthusiastically introduces a special promotion, offering a massive package of 50 sessions for a total of $6,000. Standing across the counter, Kim Seo-ah is completely taken aback, stammering in absolute disbelief at the steep $6,000 price tag. Looking thoroughly shocked, she nervously asks if his services are truly that expensive. Asul quickly reassures her, confidently explaining that Junhyun is the undisputed ace of their establishment, and because his professional skills are so highly rated, the premium price is completely justified. Meanwhile, standing a short distance away, the red-haired therapist, Lee Yoon-do, watches the interaction with quiet amusement. She leans in and quietly asks Junhyun if the woman at the counter is actually his wife, prompting the young specialist to turn bright red as he quickly and awkwardly denies the suggestion. Yoon-do playfully teases him, remarking on how incredibly popular he seems to be with his clients and suggesting that his busy life must be highly enjoyable. Letting out a quiet sigh, Junhyun weakly responds that he never could have anticipated her showing up at his workplace of all places. Their conversation is suddenly interrupted when a wide-eyed Seo-ah runs over, excitedly announcing to Junhyun that she has officially committed to the massive 50-session package. A highly startled Junhyun looks at her in utter disbelief, asking if she is truly serious about spending such a fortune. He looks at her with genuine concern, pointing out that $6,000 is an incredibly large sum of money to spend so quickly. However, a determined Seo-ah quickly brushes his worries aside, insisting that she will be perfectly fine, and reasoning that she might as well fully commit if she is going to receive regular conditioning sessions from him. Blushing deeply, Seo-ah leans in and eagerly asks him to confirm if she did a good job by purchasing the membership. A sweating and flustered Junhyun can only offer a weak, hesitant thank you in return. As she presses her hand against his shoulder, Junhyun can't help but wonder to himself just how desperately she wanted to participate in a full-body training sesh with him to drop such an astronomical amount of money. Just as the tension begins to rise, Yoon-do steps forward to intervene, stating that a certain detail has been bothering her, and directly asking Seo-ah who she is supposed to be. She questions why Seo-ah is sticking so close to Junhyun, prompting a defensive glare from the client. With an indifferent smile, Yoon-do calmly introduces herself as his colleague, before adding a highly provocative comment that she is actually a very close colleague at that. Hearing this bold claim, a deeply flushed Seo-ah reacts in absolute shock, demanding to know what she just said. Her anger quickly boils over, and she fiercely yells at Yoon-do, proudly declaring that she is actually Junhyun's girlfriend. However, Yoon-do remains entirely unfazed, casually pointing out that Junhyun himself had already stated she was not his wife or partner. With a cheerful melody, Yoon-do playfully flashes a finger heart and bids Junhyun to work hard today as she casually strolls away, leaving a thoroughly irritated Seo-ah fuming in her wake. Clinging tightly to Junhyun's arm, Seo-ah angrily demands to know who that woman thinks she is, while a highly embarrassed Junhyun frantically begs her to let go and wonders what is wrong with her. Seo-ah demands to know if he has already participated in any endurance training sessions with the red-haired therapist. Junhyun gasps in sheer embarrassment, loudly demanding to know what on earth she is talking about and questioning why she would ask such a highly sussy question. Seo-ah refuses to back down, aggressively demanding a straight answer on whether he did it or not. The intense bickering is finally cut short by the receptionist, Shin Esul, who sighs wearily from behind the counter. She dryly remarks on how much fun they seem to be having, before commanding them to stop causing a scene and telling Seo-ah to quickly head to the treatment room. Shortly after, the scene transitions to the quiet, relaxing atmosphere of the manhwa treatment room, where Junhyun politely asks if she is finally ready to begin her session. Stepping up to the table, he calmly explains his standard routine, noting that he typically starts with the back and gradually works his way forward. Applying a generous amount of lotion to his palms, Junhyun reassures her, adding that if she happens to have any specific areas of distress that she wants him to focus on, he is more than happy to target those spots to ensure she receives a highly effective fitness conditioning session. Junhyun leans in to ask about her ailments, but he suddenly pauses in complete shock. Standing at the edge of the table, he looks down to find Kim Seo-ah on her knees in a workout posture, presenting herself completely open for her treatment. Confused by her sudden sussy stance, Junhyun asks what she is doing. Wiggling her hands, she softly replies that since he mentioned she could point out specific spots for her conditioning session, she wants him to focus directly on her manicure. Looking back at him with rosy cheeks, she asks if he is capable of handling such a routine. She leans in further, adding that she wants him to perform the session not with his hands, but with a dumbbell. Junhyun can only let out a heavy sigh, addressing her formally as a customer, and explaining that the establishment strictly offers standard massage therapies and absolutely nothing else. A startled Seo-ah sits upright in shock, questioning if they truly do not provide any dumbbell services. Junhyun firmly confirms the policy, dryly asking what else one would expect from a legitimate professional establishment. After a brief, awkward silence, a flustered Seo-ah points out that she just spent $6,000 as a lump sum membership, pleading if there really isn't any extra service. Junhyun remains completely unmoved, repeating that there is absolutely nothing else. Dropping onto her knees in disappointment, she pouts that there was ultimately no point in purchasing the expensive membership. While she readily admits that his massage techniques are indeed wonderful, she sheepishly confesses that a standard routine was not the primary thing she was looking forward to today. Watching her reaction, Junhyun secretly reflects that, while accommodating her request is not entirely impossible, seeing her beg like this makes him want to tease and mess with her just a little bit more. Smiling to himself, he notes how incredibly dedicated she is to her goals, and realizes there is really no helping her. He speaks up, warning her in advance not to hold any grudges against him if she does not end up receiving a standard full-body massage today. Giving in to her wishes, they proceed with an incredibly rigorous, full-body training sesh that leaves both of them completely exhausted. Lying flat on the table afterward, a thoroughly satisfied Seo-ah sighs that the conditioning session was the absolute best. Turning to her, Junhyun admits that she is quite unbelievable, pointing out that normally, if someone had been rejected twice, they wouldn't even look at that person again. Yet, she still wanted to engage in a partner-based workout with him so badly. Seo-ah immediately blushes and defensively objects, arguing that when he previously claimed he did not want to date at the moment, it did not count as a true rejection. Junhyun chuckles and insists that it absolutely was a rejection, but she loudly disagrees. She passionately explains that conditioning training is a crucial step, and they could easily end up officially outing if they continue their high-intensity sessions together. Finding her logic overwhelming, Junhyun raises his hands in defeat, telling her she can believe whatever she wants. Suddenly, a realization hits Seo-ah, and she gasps as she remembers a piece of gossip. Sitting up on the mattress, she asks Junhyun if he has heard the latest news around town. A puzzled Junhyun asks what she is referring to, prompting her to suddenly hesitate. Feeling a bit shy, she tries to backpedal, muttering that if he does not know, she should probably just drop the subject entirely. This only piques his curiosity, and Junhyun presses her to continue, asking why she stopped talking right in the middle of her sentence. Seo-ah explains that she originally assumed his close circle would have already informed him of the situation, but she realizes they apparently left him completely in the dark, quietly wondering if they had specifically decided to exclude him from the news. Seo-ah finally reveals the mysterious news, calmly explaining to him that their old high school classmates have a major class reunion coming up in the near future. Hearing this unexpected announcement, Junhyun stands completely frozen in absolute shock.